taxes. Never. 33.4%, it gets cut. But he cannot demand anything. And do you know one thing? In the last 5 years, the middle class salaried people have been sent notices after notices after notices. Why? Why are you troubling the common, honest taxpayer? The businessman gets away. The businessman gets away. The people who have income from other sources get away. But the common people are getting to struggle.
Let me take this forward.
Voter ID lene ke liye, I took 1 year. This is the condition of e-seva kendras. Do you think this is fair?
Okay, those are governance issues. But on the budget, so Rajiv Gupta, you see, this contradiction or an anomaly, where the cook is perhaps having enough money to fly back to his home, but at the same time cribs about the cost of his thali, right? So is it happening because there is an atavism of habit? Because in earlier times, say 15 years back, 20 years back, just around when we were coming out of liberalization, I'm perhaps from the, I have some memories of pre-liberalization days also. People see that maybe they were getting their dal for 20 rupees a kg, now it's 200. They forget that they are earning enough to buy a 200 kg, rupees 200 a kilo dal, but then they say, oh, it's so expensive.
I think you are absolutely right. It's basically a psychological factor where you say, oh, mere...
And if you are really the shining star, as far as global economic growth is concerned, if you are the outlier in all of this, and if you maintain the fiscal deficit to 5.6%, then I think you ought to give a little. If you're going to have a fiscal, I think there was a projection of 4.5%. My first question would be, 4.5% is very good, but at the expense of what? If you're going to maintain a great fiscal deficit figure, I know it's great, it's fantastic, it is right in line for Viksit Bharat. But as a political journalist, I would say that I think it is time the government realizes it needs the support of the people. And any government that does not have the support of the people will not be able to have a continuous growth in its economic policy, because if the numbers stagflate, if the BJP's numbers were to be, for example, at 230 or 220, then it wouldn't be in a position to be presenting a budget. So I think there's got to be a sense of realism. I'm a great votary for the middle class in this budget. They pay the most of the income tax, they bear the most of the tax burden, they bear approximately 20% of the income tax liabilities, and I have not seen that kind of support to the middle class. And is that one of the reasons why the middle class support in the elections also went down? I kept emphasizing in my program yesterday that the middle class support to the NDA went down by 3 percentage points. And we saw that there was a net loss of seats from 303 to 240. Sorry to bring the politics in, but it's a reality. It's a reality. I'm constantly wondering, Abhishek here, constantly thinking here that is anyone listening? And if the BJP listens now, I think it'll be good for the BJP.
It would be at their peril.
BJP would want to remain in power for a long period of time. And the only way to do it is if you take the middle class along. What do you think, Rajiv? I mean, just some of my initial thoughts. What do you think? Yeah, I got a bit extreme.
It's very interesting, Arnab, to hear what you said. And in fact, I was discussing it with somebody.
Yes, I can.
It seems that there is very little linkage between votes and development that happens in the country. Somehow, they seem to be too disjointed from each other. So on the politics front, I think there is still a lot of caste-based politics which happens.
And I think that has got nothing to do with the development. Because if you go back to UP and you see that how we lost a lot of seats, NDA lost there. I don't think it can be out of lack of development.
No.
I mean, there is no way that it was happening because of that.
No.
Similarly, I mean, though I agree that, the middle class should get certain benefits. And I think it's time that it will get it now, because as I said just a few minutes back, that initial
I hope so.
Last few years was consolidation from the
Is it
COVID.
already
Okay,
there in the
let's get all the other guests also in. We have Suhail there. Good morning, Suhail. We have Ajay Bagga there. Good morning, Ajay. They have Kishore Subramaniam. Good to see some nice friends. Give a little, smile a little, Suhail. Smile a little. Yeah.
To smile.
Huh?
Nothing. This is all nonsensical. This so-called development is utter rubbish. The
What?
middle class has been screwed over multiple times by various governments. Let me give you an example of Goa. Where you live, wherever you live in Goa, there is no power, there are no roads, but we are building a smart city. Smart in whose head? Pramod Sawant's head. Look at Delhi, look at Gurgaon. Whose head are you building smart cities? In the chief minister's heads. It is utter rubbish. Who gets messed over? The middle class. You know, this gentleman, Rajiv Gupta, talked about we. I don't know if he represents the BJP or is part of the Financial Advisory Council to the Prime Minister. If he is, he should take a message back that the arrogance of the BJP in its fiscal planning is beginning to bite.
And we are all supporters of India. I'm not a supporter of the BJP or the Congress or any of those other parties. But it is beginning to bite. If they don't realize this, then they're living in a fool's paradise. A. B. It is not about middle class asking for socks. No one is asking for any sock. People are asking for their goddamn rights. You pay taxes, you want roads that you can drive or walk on. You pay taxes, you want electricity. You pay taxes, you want water. It's no one's bloody favor. No government is doing anyone any favors. Neither is Nirmala Sitharaman, nor is Pramod Sawant, nor is Naib Singh Saini, nor is anyone. These people have stopped worrying about the middle class because they're worrying about votes. But when the middle class anger translates into the deprivation of votes, then they will start worrying. And let me tell you, Arnab, it is not my contention that Rahul Gandhi will be better than Modi or someone else will be better than someone else. No. My feeling is very simple. The government that we expected would deliver for the middle class and would actually deliver in real terms. See, it was a grand economic survey, but even I can work the figures if I want. The reality is, what are we seeing on the ground? You know, Nitin Gadkari rightfully talks about massive highways, massive highways. What do you do with urban planning? What are you doing? Have you not noticed during summer what happens at all the hill stations of India? What is happening with climate change?
Yeah,
what
but
is
you can't
happening
solve
with
everything
flooding?
in a budget.
It can't. But the budget is a fiscal vision document. Only in India do we all get excited and have to wake up early for Arnab Goswami to discuss the budget.
Early?
In no other country, people discuss the
I'm
budget.
halfway through the day. So we are not like you, early to
I
bed,
get up
early.
at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
So
I
I'm
didn't
the last
party till
person to
2
be
o'clock in the
pushed
morning. Now I want to
I
get
get up at
Ajay.
4. So I'm saying
I
you
want to
have
get
look
Ajay
at
Bagga on
development.
it. See, behind Ajay Bagga's very sort of, I would say, gentlemanly, suited, booted approach to life, there's an angry young man in Ajay Bagga also, Suhail. The point is,
a suit-boot
what we are saying is this, Ajay, and you are the purveyor of the stock markets and the capital markets, you, Kishore, all very eminent people. What people are saying today, and this would not be the conversation on a CNBC, but it would be a conversation on a Republic. What people are saying is, see, stock markets are doing so well. Whenever we speak to anyone in the stock, oh, we're having a great time. Oh, the lookout is great. We're all going to make a lot of money. Capital expenditure is at an all-time high. You know, roads are getting built. You go from Delhi, Gurgaon towards Vadodara. You have a 16-lane highway. Your fiscal deficit is beautiful. It can't be better than this. It cannot be better than this, right? Your balance of payments is great. Repatriation investment is great. Everything is so great.
There is a current account surplus.
Huh?
There is a current account surplus.
There's a current account surplus. If everything is so great, then what do the people get, Ajay?
No, I think I will channelize Suhail only. And Arnab,
let's get it,
congratulations. You hit it on the nail. Totally no business channel will talk about this. The middle class angst, the poor people's angst. And I think you hit it on the nail. And I totally endorse what Suhail said. That is the problem. And if not this time, then when? Take 3 pointers, Arnab. 1.7 lakh crores didn't get spent last year's budget. It was carried in the treasury account. She is sitting on that money. In the first 3 months, the government could spend on infrastructure minus 14% year on year because everybody was in election mode and then shocked by the election mode. you have to grow at 35% in the next 9 months to make up that infra budget. It's enough. 11 lakh crores also you can't digest. You don't have the capacity at the state and district levels to digest. That is enough. Now let's get back to consumption. 60% of the GDP runs on personal consumption, which has been growing at 4.5%. 66% of India is sitting in rural India, which is growing at 4% over the last 5 years.
True.
We have that 8-9% in urban India. So those are the pointers that are showing you why do you need 80 crore people getting food aid if 64 crore Indians are actually employed? Why do you need to give them 5 kgs of rice and wheat every month? I think those are the pointers. The middle class today is pauperized because you have not given any tax break since 2014. And what you were earning, 1 lakh rupees of 2014 is equal to 51,000 rupees today in purchasing power terms. But madam comes in and, the bureaucrats, unfortunately, who are running the show, they will say, no, it's fine. Let them eat cake. That is the reality. The purchasing power of people is going down. There is the 10% India, which is on par with Europe. So you have a huge consumption class in India, but it is very narrow. And at the bulge of the cylinder, it's not even a pyramid. There is a very small topi at the top. Rest is a cylinder of suffering India, Arnab.
Yeah,
and
but,
I thank you. I thank you for bringing this up.
No, I'm happy that you brought it up, and I'm happy you've taken on what Sohail said. I want Kishore to come in on this, and I also want Sandeep Tandon. Sandeep is the founder and CI of Quant Mutual Funds. From the perspective of people who work with you, what are you looking at in the context of the discussion we are having first, Sandeep, this morning?
I think I agree what Ajay talked about. Okay, so we have to look at post-COVID, there has been a ruler stress. Okay, and it has been played out globally given the supply side inflation, which we have seen globally. It has hurt a lot of people. So I think government has to do a lot many things on the increasing on the disposable income. So I do expect personally that the government should focusing on increasing the disposable income, and that will flip the economy. Ultimately, the consumption has to move up in the last many years is all about capex and capex. I think we have to come back to up to certain extent towards the consumption side also, and I think that will cheer up the mood of the middle class as well as the masses who are suffering.
But this has become a dominant theme. If you're seeing this, Abhishek, Sharmila, this time, I have seen the pre-budget discussions that are going on. I've never seen as much focus on the middle class, and I think this is coming from people. Ajay makes a very good point, Sharmila. He says that you actually have spent less. You have spent less than you could have. Yeah. And I was looking at the numbers, Kishore. The total expenditure for FY24 is 60,000 crores as compared to what their budgeted estimates were. Basic, simple English, ladies and gentlemen. You had the money, you spent less, which means you have the money. You can say we've had very efficient expenditure management, excellent management of our P&L, lower cost of borrowing, and all this leads to this downward revision that we see of the budgeted expenditure on interest payments. So all of these numbers are sounding very good. I'm not an economist, but basically, Kishore, this is great. You have a lower cost of subsidy also. Your expenditure on major subsidies declines by 22% on a year-on-year basis because you're giving the people the fertilizer. These are pictures from Nirmala Sitharaman's house. You're giving people fertilizer, you're giving people food subsidies, but your expenditure on the subsidies have declined by 24 and 22%. I'm talking only about fertilizer and food subsidies. Point being this, at the end of the day, you're helping the poor, very good. You're helping those in the stock market, fantastic. Stock market's booming, great. Even the loss-making companies are making money. Environment's good, Sharmila?
Yes. Environment's
good
absolutely.
To give a little.
But look at this, Arnab. 48% decline in household savings. And what are we talking about? This is a huge number. If people are not saving in this country, because India is primarily a savings-based economy, but if households are eroding their savings, then what are we talking about? Because we have been resilient through the pandemic.
But people have to have surplus income for that.
Exactly.
Do they have that? Because there are inflationary pressures also. Though they are saying retail inflation has gone down a bit, but there are inflationary pressures.
But Ajay Bagga would be happy because probably more people are investing more, people are creating more wealth. Ajay, what do you have to say about that?
People would be creating more. Ajay is not happy because Ajay is on the side of the. There's nobody tonight on this program, Kishore, who's not on the side of the middle class, you know, and the middle class is asking these questions quite vocally for the first time. Kishore.
Yeah. Arnab, let me tell you, for the middle class, the month end begins on the 15th. An employee who earns 35,000 to 40,000 in my organization is having 5 credit cards. He's not having 5 credit cards to go to Bangkok or Thailand, but he's having because he's not able to make up his domestic expenses. You need to understand that from the stock market, this time we have to move to the sabji market. That is the problem. We have to understand that the common man is suffering, and if this time you keep on increasing the capex from 5 lakh crore to 9 lakh crore to 11 lakh crore and don't give sops, or I wouldn't say even the word sop, you don't give relief to the middle class, the consumption is not going to kick off. Your 240 will go down by another 20%, and it is not politics. It is genuine thing. Please remember, in India, pension is taxed. FDs for senior citizens is taxed. Senior citizen waiver and trains have been taken off. So you can't be continuously taxing only the middle class. The Aam Aadmi is a sandwich. His always has been in the... See, when I was a young guy and I had an aspiration to buy a house and I had 5 lakhs with me, the cost of the house was 20. Today I may have 50 lakh, but the cost of the house is 2 crores. This gap is continuous. You may have bought out a lot of people from multidimensional poverty, and your fiscal deficit may look fantastic. You have unspent money. Please understand that gross domestic savings is going down continuously because the expense is going up. From the 15th to 20th of a month, the middle class starts its month end. That is bad news for politics, for economics, for savings and day-to-day life.
Okay, counter view to that. Government would say, come on, I mean, these are the same people who are buying homes. You have record sales in real estate. Ajay.
No, that is there, Arnab. Record sales in, and again, as I said, if you cut India, 1% is French in terms of the per capita income. 10% is European. Then 20% is Indonesian, and 70% of India is sub-Saharan Africa. The problem is that 70% has to be brought up at least to an Indonesian level. That is where we are struggling. You're not, we say we are generating jobs. 80% of jobs are less than 20,000 rupees a month. What will people eat in that? One number I want to give, Arnab. One number, if you will allow me. 2% of India is paying the entire personal income tax. Your personal income tax is more than the corporate tax.
A lot of
you
people
have cut the corporate tax to 15%.
A lot of people cheering for all of us tonight, Ajay, because you know I can see that I'm told we are the highest watched on live streaming this morning. So Sohail getting up in the morning has been worth it. He raised his hand once more.
I get up at 4 a.m.
It is Sohail. It is Sohail.
Kishore Subramaniam and Ajay Bagga said people are buying houses. You're asking why are people buying houses? What should we do? Become turtles? Curl up and die? Have no aspiration? Because Narendra Modi wants to send $25 million or $250 million to Palestine or to Israel or wherever? The Indians should just curl up and die? Should we not have aspiration? What kind of nonsense is this? And you're right, Arnab, this is not being discussed on any financial channel because
that's where we lose the focus.
They will say, pro-poor, pro-farmer, visionary budget. These 3 terms have been used to describe every budget since 1991.
I feel that the growth engine of the country is still the middle class.
And I don't give a damn about the government's deficit.
You need to give a damn about that. I mean, let's not be unrealistic. I mean, to give credit to the government, which you're not.
I give no credit.
Maintaining fiscal deficit is a very important task.
For running this program.
Maintaining fiscal deficit, these things also matter. You know, we have to have the right numbers, but right numbers for the people as well. Well, a lot of action outside the finance ministry. I'm told Suesha is there, and there have been lots of people coming in and out. Suesha Savant, live from North Block. Suesha, can you take us through what we may expect in the, the customary pre-budget run-up over the next, say, half an hour or so?
I think it should be lesser than that, Arnab, because with the kind of movement I see at the North Block, right outside the Finance Ministry, I do feel that it will happen in a few minutes. In fact, all the cameras are mounted to get that very iconic picture that happens every year, where Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will be carrying that tablet in the Bahi Khata pouch that she will flash for all the cameras. And yes, the big question on whether she will meet expectations. Lots, that is really being looked at for the army, for the middle class, for what India Inc. And the demands they have placed. Let me quickly give you a 360-degree view as the security is now being heightened, and we have already seen one carcade, one set of cars that have already arrived at the Finance Ministry, where MOS Finance has made his way inside. The message that he gives this morning, that this budget will be Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So that is the note that we start on ahead of listening to the big budget announcement at 11 a.m. It is time for us to slip into a very short commercial break, but we'll continue to get you all the live action from the Finance Ministry. In a few minutes from now, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will arrive here, and flashing for all the cameras, the Bahi Khata pouch, which will have that tablet that came actually into force from 2021, and she will be reading the union budget from that at 11 a.m. in the Parliament. Stay tuned.
Yeah, I mean, I think, she's had 4 years of experience in the White House, has seen the execution of the Biden policies, has been part of that. So I think for her to carry the torch makes sense.
I feel like, she didn't have a great track record running as president, and then Joe Biden selecting her as vice president, that was a choice as well, too. I feel like people really need to get to know her more. You know, being the vice president doesn't give you the best, you know, doesn't give you a huge limelight, you know what I mean? We don't really know what she's running on. It's very much Biden's policy, so it's now, what is she gonna do, you know? And then vice president on her end, too. You know, who would she pick as vice president? Well, for me, look, anything, my biggest thing is making sure that Trump doesn't get in the White House. So I feel like even if she was to become the nominee, I'm going to vote regardless, you know, for her. But I really want to know too what her policies are. That's the big thing for me.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and good morning. It's budget morning, and we have Gopi right outside the finance minister's. She's at the stakeout outside the finance minister's residence, and she'll take us through what is expected in Nirmala Sitharaman's itinerary. Gopi, over to you.
In fact, we are standing right outside the Nirmala Sitharaman's residence, where we are expecting her to be out anytime soon, where she's now going to proceed towards the North Block. We have just witnessed that the Chief Finance Secretary as well as the MOS reached the North Block, and there is heavy media personals who are waiting outside Nirmala Sitharaman's residence. And what remains special about this finance minister is she is in fact going to surpass the record of Morarji Desai, who has given 6 consecutive budgets, while this would be Sitharaman's 7th budget. We are expecting her to leave from her residence any time from now, and she would be heading towards the North Block, after which she would be going for a photo op session. Then she would then be meeting the cabinet ministers, and after that she would be tabling she is out. Nirmala Sitharaman has just left from her residence for North Block. She would be there in North Block in no time, and there she would be meeting the MOS. From there she would be picking the document of budget.
Excellent. Those are
Nirmala
the pictures.
Sitharaman has left from her residence. She would be reaching the North Block.
She's going to North Block next, then she'll go to Rashtrapati Bhavan, and then I think from there she goes on to Parliament. That's the usual schedule.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got the pictures there. That's fantastic. Thank you, Gopi, for that update. I'm joined right now by the Executive Director of the IMF, the very celebrated KV Subramaniam. Good morning, Mr. Subramaniam. This is Arnab here. You're joining a very, sort of a very strong and very angsty panel this morning that has been talking about what the middle class gets. You have an angry Sohail Seth, you have an getting angry Ajay Bagga and all of us here. Well, anyway, you're joining us from Washington. What's the lookout? You've mapped the economy in your career. You've worked with the government. You know exactly what it takes. So I don't think we can get a better perspective, Ajay, Sohail, Rajiv, and everyone here than from KV himself. So KV, as an I don't say outside observer, how do things look this time?
I think I'm quite excited, Arnab. First of all, I have a long night ahead here. It's almost 11 o'clock in the night. So I'm looking forward to the first budget speech of this new government. I'm hoping for continuation of some of the good policies that have been implemented in the previous years, especially on capital expenditures. I think the infrastructure creation is an aspect that must be definitely continued. At the same time, I'm hoping for some more emphasis on manufacturing, because that is really critical critical from the perspective of job creation. Also, I think as yesterday Anand's economic survey very rightly highlighted, it is important to continue, easing the, doing business, and especially I would say from the tax perspective, because one of the key areas in which, whether it's the private sector, individuals or corporates interact with the government, it is through taxation, and easing some of that I think is really critical. I'm hoping some of the announcements that were made on innovation in particular, if you remember, Arnab, in the interim budget, 1 lakh crore was allocated, zero cost basically financing for long term for innovation. I think that is really critical. The National Research Foundation that was created, that can be allied together with this funding to, provide more funding for innovative projects, especially on climate change and some of the problems that India peculiarly, faces now. Innovation and entrepreneurship have to actually take on to solve India's problems. So these are some of the areas that I'm hoping that, a vision will be laid out in the budget. Of course, it's also the first budget where there is actually a coalition dharma to be followed. So I think that is something that I would watch interestingly as well.
So yeah, it's a balancing, KV. Thank you for your introductory comments. I think I take off on that. I put the next question to Abhishek. Abhishek, he mentioned jobs. I think manufacturing, we were just talking about it. And the economic survey actually says that the Indian economy must create some 7.85 million jobs, about 80 lakh jobs each year in the non-agricultural sector to keep pace with the increasing demand and population growth.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know how this balancing act will happen, and maybe you want to take that forward with KV.
Yeah, so Mr. Subramaniam, you see, yesterday in the economic survey, while it said that you need 8 million jobs, it also very interestingly said that these jobs can't come from the government. They have to come from the private sector. So essentially, the private sector has to start picking up the tabs. Now, enough of heavy lifting by the government. The private sector has to come in.
Precisely, and it said, sorry to interrupt, it said, I'm sure KV knows the economic survey like the back of his hand, but it said that the investment in private sector in machinery, equipment, intellectual property products are only seeing a very limited growth, right? Whereas the investment on buildings, dwelling structures goes up by 105%. It's a disparity.
Yeah.
Basically, the argument being made here is the private sector is not investing in the areas which will create growth
and jobs.
But what happens here? KV, what happens? How do we change that?
So, I think, Arnab, what has been highlighted, I have no doubt in my mind that it is a private sector that has to take on the role of job creation. It was only in the socialist economy pre-1991 that the government provided jobs. The private sector has to be the engine for job creation. But let me also highlight here that on employment and job creation in general over the last couple of years, I have found that some of the negative narratives have actually preceded the reality. I think while there is definitely need for job creation, there has been some very good improvement there as well. I think the use of the very poor quality CMI data has led to some of the negative narratives on employment. I think the economic survey and the RBI report, which uses a very high quality CLEMS data, which is, by the way, not just for India, but across the world, it shows that about 9 crore jobs have been created over the last, 10 years. And I think that's excluding agriculture jobs. So clearly job creation has happened. I would emphasize manufacturing once again, because that is where, jobs of high quality are created, jobs which basically don't have as much uncertainty. And that is important for furthering, consumption as well in the economy. So I think I would hope that the labor laws which were passed during the time when I was in the government, but the subordinate rules for those have not been yet announced. States have to sort of come forward to work on this, because that is a really critical element of the manufacturing sector growth.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, as KV is speaking, those are pictures of Nirmala Sitharaman arriving at the North Block. This first glimpse of the finance minister on budget day. We have very good panel with us, and I'm sure the KV, Ajay Bagga, Suhail, Sandeep Tandon, Rajiv Gupta, all eminent people in the studio would also like to throw a couple of your thoughts so we make this more conversational. Viewers, if you're joining us tonight on Republic Budget Day Live, we are joined by KV Subramaniam right now, and as you all know, very eminent economist. He's been Chief Economic Advisor to the Government of India for 3 years. He did a great job in choppy waters, difficult times, and quite admirable. I think his time as Chief Economic Advisor, Ajay, as we know, coincided, unfortunately, with the COVID period. So he was part of the group that kept things going at that time. So, and he's, among the younger voices in the economic circle. So, Ajay, you want to throw something at him? I mean, he's laid it out. I think jobs is the one question we've raised. But what would you like to pick up? Ajay.
No, I think infrastructure, we are reaching a capacity issue. The government and the economic survey did talk about skill building. Arnab, yesterday, the economic survey said 1 out of 2 graduates are not employable in India. So we are giving an education. The new education policy has come in. It will take a long time to make an impact. It has started. But the need of the hour is quality jobs, as what Subhu's just mentioned. We need to create a lot of quality jobs. The second big issue for the country as such, 65% of the population is sitting on only 18% of the GDP, which is this rural population, which creates 18% of the gross value added. So we need to get them into the global supply chain. We need to welcome whatever capital is coming in. It comes back to that ease of doing business. Third, what was mentioned, Subbu also mentioned it, the big thing is that gross capital formation, if you look at Arnab, 82% of that was people buying houses and buildings. Yes. 18% was actual new machinery and factories. Output gap in the economy is very huge. What does that mean? You have a factory, but it's running at 70% capacity. Yeah. We should be running 3 shifts, running it at 300% capacity. Why we can't do that? The global consumption and Indian consumption.
I'll take a...
Comes back to job creation.
Yeah, I'll get one response to those points mentioned here. We're going back on jobs, employment and employability, KV. And economic survey also says, I mean, we have to be clear. You're in US, you realize that AI is going to take up a lot of jobs. There'll be challenges because of AI. I think this time economic survey also mentioned that availability of skilled labor will be a major roadblock. So, KV, are these future challenges or immediate challenges for India?
I think this is a very good question, Arnab. If we look at some very recent work that's been done at MIT, there's a very nice paper written by David Otter and Darren Acemoglu on AI. I think what is important to keep in mind is that we should not be oscillating between sort of excessive fear-mongering on the one hand because of AI and complacency on the other hand. There will be some impact definitely of AI. It will be more in the nature of the transformation, the kind of jobs. And especially for a country like India, and this aspect I think the economic survey highlights very well, that we have to focus on especially industry. And here I would actually urge industry organizations like CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM to really take the onus in emphasizing labor-intensive growth. I think for a country like India, which has a significant amount of labor and therefore and demography, can be a potential tailwind. If our companies only emphasize substituting labor with capital, that is something that actually may potentially benefit that company in the short run, but in the long run will highlight, will create problems. I think one aspect, Arnab, that I actually have always, emphasized is that our regulations need to really enable our small companies to grow big. It is actually the children that grow to become giants. They are the ones that create jobs. If you take an Infosys, which had about 10 employees in the late 80s, today has several lakh employees. That's just one anecdote showing. But actually our regulations oftentimes actually inhibit and create dwarfs. They don't grow and thereby job creation does not happen. So there's a critical role for government to actually, sort of ease off on some of these regulations to enable job creation. Just one statistic that I think is very important. If you take the United States, you talked about it, I'm here. If you take a 5-year-old firm vis-a-vis a 40-year-old firm, a 40-year-old firm creates 7 times as much jobs than a 5-year-old in the US. In India, what is that number? That is only 1.4 times. In other words, as the firm ages, in the US, it's creating 5 times as much jobs. And that is because children are growing into giants to create jobs. And this is because of the perverse incentives that our regulations provide. I'm hoping that these are aspects that the budget really considers. There's a huge role for policy making to actually ease off some of these obstacles to job creation and overall, growth in the economy.
Absolutely. But Abhishek, you want to quickly, I just want to take a quick break here. I don't want to let KV go, but I will have to because I have to take a break. And I want to tell you, viewers, KV is joining us at 11 o'clock, which means he's going to be up till 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. So best of luck with that. Okay, I'll take a short break, ladies and gentlemen. I'll join you in a few minutes. We are on the Budget Day Live.
I'm the nominee of this party because 14 million Democrats like you voted for me in the primaries. You made me the nominee, no one else, not the press, not the pundits, not the insiders, not donors. You, the voters, you decided, no one else, and I'm not going anywhere. I've been doing this a long time. The idea that I'm the old guy, I am. I'm old. But I'm only 3 years older than Trump, number one. And number two, my mental acuity's been pretty damn good. I've gotten more done than any president has in a long, long time in 3.5 years. So I'm willing to be judged on that. I understand why people say, God, he's 81 years old. Whoa. What's he going to be when he's 83 years old or 84 years old? It's a legitimate question to ask.
Is there a sense of wanting to get back on the horse?
I'm on the horse. Where have you been? I've done 22 major events, met thousands of people, overwhelming crowds, a lot happening. I'm on the horse. What I'm doing is going out and demonstrating to the American people that I have command of all my faculties, that I don't need notes, I don't need teleprompter. I can go out and answer any questions at all. And I stood there when NATO was in town. I stood there for an hour and answered questions.
If you were to continue to run and be officially nominated, what happens if you have another episode like we saw during the debate?
What happens if another?
Yeah, what happens if you have another performance on that on that level?
ये बजट 2047 जब आजादी के 100 साल होंगे तब विकसित भारत का जो हमारा सपना है उस सपने को पूरा करने की मजबूत नींव वाला बजट लेकर के हम देश के सामने आएंगे।
Amity has been ranked India's #1 private university in the recently released Education World Rankings, a testimony to Amity's globally benchmarked standards in education.
Gentlemen, to the coverage of Budget 2024, and just to start with, we'll go straight back to Ajay Bagga, and we have some concerns here. Ajay, KV is still with us. I want to flag them with you and then bounce it off KV. That there are certain structural issues which have been, eyebrows have been raised in the economic survey. Capital markets doing extremely well. extremely well. You know, in fact, if you look at the market capitalization, can you share those numbers?
It's $5 trillion plus.
And what has been the rate of growth?
140% of the GDP.
Can you tell me the 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 numbers, you know, how it panned out over the last few years? You know, how the market capitalization has grown, Abhishek?
Yeah, I'll come to that. I'm just looking at the exact.
So why are people getting concerned about the markets doing so well?
So basically, what is happening is, Arnab, that people are shifting their savings from banks and putting it in real estate, putting it in stocks, and the stock market has run ahead of the real economy, and that's a concern which Ajay Bagga can answer.
But yeah, Ajay, we want to respond to that. Ajay.
Yeah, Arnab, markets are forward discounting mechanisms. So they discount the future. And, both SEBI and RBI heads have come out with statements that the retail participation in the markets is getting worrisome. I think that is a very fallacious argument. Why I would say that? Last December, Arnab, for the first time, the retail ownership of Indian stocks was more than the foreign ownership. Clearly now, thanks to the mutual fund SIPs, every month last year, we saw 2 lakh crores coming into mutual funds from retail investors. That kind of investment has made us largely independent of the foreign control of our markets. Now, what SEBI and RBI are saying, RBI is saying deposits are not growing. But RBI is also doing what? 90,000 crores have come into Indian bond markets thanks to being
included in the JP Morgan bond index. They have sterilized that. They have made the liquidity so tight, and banks are not increasing rates. You can make 7% on an arbitrage mutual fund with a 2-day liquidity, and a bank deposit is giving you that, where you are paying the marginal tax return. So you're not getting service, you're not getting interest rates. Why should customers go to deposits? That's one. Second, the SEBI chairperson is saying too much retail investors are coming into the derivative segment. 90% of them make losses. So that's good. We can regulate that segment. But what is not good, we are not regulating the high frequency traders. China makes sure that every algo that invests into China is deposited with China, including the Microsoft Windows software is sitting with China, which we don't have. So to operate in China, 1,600 HFTs algos are sitting with China. We have a free reign where a Jane Street makes $1 billion on one strategy, not on their whole company, only because it went into the US courts, we came to know. So 90% Indian retail is losing money. That is a truism. But why aren't you going and making sure that the HFT's access to the Indian market is controlled? They are high volatility creators. They are very short-term money, and they are out only to make money on the margin. They are not creating any value for the markets or for the country. Why are you not going after them, and you're trying to put stumbling blocks for the retail? We are a nation of savers. We were never a nation of investors. We are getting to be a nation of investors. We shouldn't become a nation of speculators. That I agree, but the approach is wrong.
Abhishek.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, Ajay Bagga. But you see, the pace at which this has happened, maybe KV Subramanian can, give some perspective on that. So the first $1 trillion was reached in 2007. Remember, the markets had been in existence for 4 or 5 decades. The second $1 trillion was reached in 2017, a decade later. The third in 2021. Fourth in November of 2023, just 6 months back. And in last 6-7 months, we have, or 8 months, we have the next $1 trillion becoming a $5 trillion stock market. So obviously, the markets have run ahead of the real economy, and that's the concern which has been expressed by the RBI and the SEBI both. And the structural liquidity issue, in the sense, like the Chinese have suffered, we can't be getting into that situation because of a hot real estate market. We end up tanking like the Chinese have happened. KV Subramanian, like it has happened with the case of Chinese. Mr. Subramanian.
I think the points that Ajay has raised are actually quite pertinent to keep in mind. I will add that compared to foreign investors, retail investors, having been on the board of a bank, for instance, one of the things that one learns is that if you look at the base of deposits, while there is some volatility in the current account and savings account, a good base, about half of that remains very stable. I think that is something that one can potentially say about retail investor participation in stock markets as well. While there'll be some investors who will come in and some others will get out, there'll be a base that will also stay, and therefore it likely can provide stability. I don't think there's any evidence, systematic evidence that's been provided on that. I'm just using my economic intuition to actually talk about this compared to foreign investors who are far more volatile. So I think the increased retail investor participation is likely to give more stability to our domestic markets. I will emphasize that when this investment goes into actual directly the cash markets, stocks rather than derivatives, I think that is better, because when money goes into the actual, in the cash market, that does provide equity and, debt to the companies. In contrast, derivatives are far more sophisticated. Look, before my PhD, I've done this for a living at ICICI. Derivatives are, far more sophisticated. You have to understand them very well. And I want to use this platform to appeal to retail investors. There are sharks out there. I think they can basically eat you up. So be very careful when, speculating on derivatives. That's an aspect that I think has to be kept in mind. But overall, I think retail investor participation is definitely much better. These algorithms actually, which are, doing high frequency trades, some sand in their wheels, is something that I think I would recommend from a policy perspective.
Absolutely. I want to get Kishore on what the markets will look for. Kishore, today?
Okay, as far as the market is concerned, the market is looking for, basically the market functions the fact that no bad news is good news. But this time around, I don't think so that's going to happen. I honestly believe that if you really want this country to become savers and true investors, then the long-term capital gain tax should have a relief. That's my wish list, but I don't know that's going to happen or not. Because most of the people who do F&O, as Mr. K.V. Subramanian was telling, I often tell my clients that if you're doing futures and options, you'll have no option in the future. That's the condition you're going to land up in. And if you really want to become an investor, you need to have consultants. And what is important for the markets to understand today is that middle class consumption is the driver of the economy. And if that is not happening, and if more and more middle class are going to end up in the credit debt cycle like the European and the Western world, where every 40,000 earning member is going to have 5 credit cards, we are not going to be a nation which is going to be prosperous. In the middle segment of the pyramid, the topi will have beautiful, good life. The bottom will have a top problem, which is the tomato, onion, and potatoes, and the middle class will always be the sandwich. I am emphasizing the middle classes month end should be on the 30th and not on the 20th. This is a strong message. I think the finance minister and the government should not be far away from reality. Arnab, hats off to you, because you have been running this continuously. Every channel is talking about macroeconomic jargon. My cook is not bothered about fiscal deficit, debt to GDP, nothing. He is bothered about the fact कि बिजली कम हुआ, train कम हुआ, सड़क अच्छा मिला, अस्पताल मिला. Period. If this is not the focus, I think we are missing out a lot, and 240 will go subpar. And I will tell you one thing, if there was tax on pension, every middle class would be bankrupt.
No, I think
a strong sentiment.
It's
a strong sentiment.
It's a strong sentiment. We've hit the nail on the head, Rajiv. This is the thought. But I'll tell you one thing about the Prime Minister. Abhishek, you know this well. The Prime Minister has been planning this budget non-politically. Now the question will be, does the election result have an impact on it?
Yeah.
I look at the statements of the Prime Minister in February. In February, they were very sure they are coming back to power. They have. But they did not go all out in February just for the polls. They went strategic with their planning with the long-term benefits in mind. And Prime Minister said then, I am planning new schemes for the last 1.5 years to eliminate poverty. I am making this roadmap. I have taken suggestions from 15 lakh people. I'm working on it. I have never issued a press note. And, basically what I want to look at, Rajiv, is whether the Prime Minister continues to be non-political in his approach. Though I don't think, if he's working with the Viksit Bharat project in mind, then he perhaps will look at it that way. He'll say, I'm thinking of future generations. But this time the politician and the Prime Minister and the BJP will also sort of counterweigh that and force them to listen to people like Kishore?
I somehow have always felt that both dovetail into each other. I mean,
they do.
Basically, when we talk about a Viksit Bharat and when we have a roadmap, things fall in place as we move along. For example, infrastructure development is not an overnight job. It's a long-term job. It cuts down your this thing from 15-16% to about 9-10%. Your cost of taking goods, etc. Now, all those things make your economy competitive, number one. Number two, when you talk about job creation is only going to happen if there is inclusive growth which happens all across the country. And that will only happen if you have the right kind of infrastructure and everything happening. So I think all of that falls in place one after the other. And I somehow have a feeling that there is nothing called a populist budget. I mean, there should not be something which is called a populist budget.
You have to have prudence. You have to have prudence,
Prudence
not
has to be
populism.
there. There has to be a long-term plan. Within that long-term plan, everything needs to fit in.
The government certainly has a much more bigger elbow room right now with the RBI giving the kind of surplus that it has. Obviously, the focus will be whether at all there will be tax cuts or not. The fact that they have a surplus of $25 billion is huge.
I want to go to Madhusudan Kela also right now. We have a great panel, ladies and gentlemen. We have the markets opening in some time. Madhusudan, Arnab here. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, good morning. Hi.
So
good morning,
if you've been watching budget cover, these are one of the most eminent voices on any budget day. Ajay Bagga, Madhusudan Kela, Rajiv, Kishore, all great voices. Madhusudan, Ajay and we have all been talking. What are you looking forward in this budget? You are fantastic with the macro view. I like the way you put your perspective between business, corporate investment and the larger national picture. So how do you view things this time?
So, Arnav, I've been in the market for more than 30 years now, and I've been actively investing. I think the financial position and the fiscal position of the government in my career has never been better than what it is today. Basically, from all fronts, India seems to be really firing. We have a stable inflation, we have very high growth rate, we have a very good and burgeoning stock markets, and a lot of companies are able to raise money and helping in capital formation. We have fantastic retail participation and fiscal elbow room for the government to do whatever they need to do for the deprived portion of the societies, may it be farmer, may it be job creation. So I think we are in a fantastic time for this budget. Even though some section of the market is concerned about, there could be some tinkering on long-term capital gains, I am not in that camp. I don't think, why will the government like to spoil if everything is going well, and for what reason? So I think we are in a good time, and this budget should just continue the story of India growth, which is happening for now 4 or 5 years consistently.
So you're not looking like, someone like you or Ajay would not be looking at any concessions or things like that. Kishore, you raised your hand and comment to what Madhusudan said.
I have a point, Arnab. Let me tell you to the all elite panelists, Madhusudanji, you have made a lot of money for me and many people. Thank you. But let me tell you one important thing. Middle class crisis is bigger than midlife crisis. Because midlife crisis is only for a small time. Middle class crisis is for lifetime. Please understand this problem. Arnab, you have raised a valid point. The nation wants to know morning, afternoon and night. What is the problem? How are you going to address this middle class crisis? मैं जिंदगी भर middle class में रह जाऊं? When you had the break, my cook said, Narendra Modi ji said, हवाई चप्पल वाले भी हवाई जहाज में जाएंगे. वो बोल रहे हैं ना मैं हवाई जहाज में जा पा रहा हूं ना हवाई चप्पल.
No, what Madhusudan is saying. No. Why, Kishore, I don't know how much money Madhusudan has made for you. That is between you and Madhusudan. May he continue to make you rich. I can certainly say, Madhusudan, that Kishore is not middle class, but nevertheless, especially after the money that you have made for him. But the question is, what Madhusudan is saying is that, my question was what? My question was, what are the markets looking for? He said the government is doing great. Basically, Ajay, what Madhusudan is saying is, the government needs to continue to do more, which means they must focus on capex, they must focus on indigenization, they must focus on keeping the fiscal deficit, I guess, you know, focus a little bit on the rural sector so that no sector goes under-encouraged, and just keep things going. I mean, basically, Ajay, Madhusudan is saying, can we just leave the... Sorry, I'm over-interpreting you. I see your hand go. What you're saying is, we had a lot of stress during the election. BJP has come back with lesser numbers. Can you just go back to the way things were 6 months back, right, Madhusudan? Is that the sense I'm getting from you? Or but there must be some worry areas. There's a coalition government. Things are not the same, Madhusudan. Things are not the same, won't be the same.
Arnab, you interpreted it right. Let me respond to the gentleman. See, there is no magic wand by which you can make 140 crore people rich overnight, or you can take them above the middle class line. I think what the government has done in the last 10 years is really commendable. If they just continue to do this good work, which is really focused on capital expenditure and the growing the economy at 6.5%, 7%, keeping employment into their purview, I think a lot of people have progressed in last 10 years, and many more people will progress. The only way to really be a good socialist in India is to focus on capitalism. Because unless you create capital in this country, you can't solve problems of billions of people.
Yeah, so that's the point. Ajay, can I get you back? We saw the market open right now. How do you see the market open? What do you expect today's trends to be? He mentioned employment, capital expenditure. I want to focus next 5 minutes purely on markets with you. Ajay?
No, markets have done very well. I think the one factor, what Madhu also mentioned, is if there is any tinkering on the capital gains tax, that could
but he doesn't expect it, he also said.
I also don't.
Yeah. But that is a fear at the back, because it was done for the debt part of the market. So for the debt mutual funds, that was brought in. And now if you look at it, Arnab, it's a very complex area of capital gains tax on different asset classes. So that remains a fear. We'll have to see. The second part, what the market will look at, one number, the fiscal deficit number. Okay, we got the FM.
Yeah, please continue. Please continue.
Okay. So, the fiscal deficit number, they've got a very big boost from the RBI. Instead of 80,000 crores, they gave them 2.1 lakh crores. There's 1.7 lakh crore which has come in cash from the last year unspent. And you have very strong tax collections as far as the first quarter goes. So the economy is doing very well, much better than what was even forecast in the economic survey yesterday. Last year's economic survey had talked about 6.5 to 7. We came at 8.2% growth for the economy after inflation. And again this year, we will probably do 7 to 7.5.
Yeah, that's viewers. I go back to Madhusudan Kela with that. Ajay Baga commenting, Madhusudan on screen, and we have viewers Nirmala Sitharaman, who it's 11 minutes past 9, and she will be in the next 5 minutes. That's her with her team and the Bahikata, and she will be with her team going to the Rashtrapati Bhavan. The appointment is at 9:30 as usual, and after meeting the president, she will proceed to Parliament. All happening very, very quickly. Madhusudan, I'm coming back to you because we have limited time with you. What I want you to elaborate on one thing. From what I understand you are saying is that there is fiscal room available this time. There's a considerable amount of fiscal room that the government has, and I think what continuity is what the market is looking at. They're looking for a sort of what I would call, Madhusudan, a balanced approach. That's basically all the stakeholders are taken care of. However, there's always that one thing that causes some excitement, some positive mood. What would that be, Madhusudan? There's always balance, continuity is good, but there was maybe, something which makes the headline. Also, I think I'm not sure if it's the markets that the Prime Minister wants to cater to, but I'm sure there's some element of newsiness he would want in the budget this time, not just another boring budget.
Yeah, but now I can give you a very complicated answer, but that is not my nature. I would say what is market looking at is only the continuity. Just continue to do the good work, focus on capital expenditure, focus on infrastructure, making sure that the subsidy burden is reduced, making sure that the wasteful expenditure is reduced. This is the first time in the history now, in 32 years, that the government borrowing actually will be lower than last year.
Yeah.
I repeat again, this is the first time in the history that the government borrowing may be lower than what it was last year. Right? So that is the continuity which we want. And I want to highlight one more point, Varna, with data. Then who is the biggest beneficiary of this bull run? The government itself. The market capitalization of all the PSU companies put together was only 13 lakh crores in 2020. The government share was 8.5 lakh crores. Today the market capitalization of all the public sector companies put together is 80 lakh crores and the government share is 55 lakh crores. So the government not only has the fiscal room in terms of RBI dividend or the little bit of tax buoyancy, they have enormous balance sheet room wherein they can divest 2-3% of these public sector companies and they can do as much good as they want to do for the poor. And that is what my point is, that the stock market buoyancy is not only good for individuals, but it is the best thing which has happened for the government of India, which has made the balance sheet of government of India very, very strong.
No, I am totally with you on that, but so viewers, the takeaway from that, never been as good, continued growth in capital expenditure is what he's saying, maybe some targeted increase in revenue expenditure to support all the core schemes. But on taxes, what would you expect? A broadly stable tax structure is what the market would look at. Can, you know, markets keep looking at fiscal discipline. How important is that number?
The market is not even asking for reduction in taxation. Whatever needs to be done, market is not even asking for reduction in taxation. Whatever needs to be done has been done. Just continue the good work. That is what the market wants.
Markets, and that's great for the markets because...
Not even the STT? Not even the securities transaction tax?
You can ask him.
Yeah, I think STT again, we don't want a reduction. We just don't want it to increase.
They just want it. See, listen to Madhu. He just
people in the stock market are now, we are paying so much taxes. We are paying STT. We are paying long term. We are paying short term taxation. We are paying dividend distribution taxation. We are paying buyback taxation. We are paying income tax. How much more tax can the government ask for from the stock market?
No. He's saying, listen. What he's saying is that everyone's got a smile there right now. Basically, what he's saying, Ajay, is, can you just let us alone? We are making money, you're making money, be happy, don't bring in any capital gains tax. We made a lot of money, Madhusudan. Now, come on, Madhusudan. What if someone says, Sushil, what if someone says that, listen, Sensex went up 35% since budget of 23. Yeah. Nifty went up 39% since budget of 23. Yes. Right? You made a lot of money. But what did middle class didn't make so much money? So what is, there's a little bit of, tinkering.
Because, Arnab, the difference is we believed in India, someone else
you
did not
think middle
believe.
class doesn't believe in India?
You have to believe in the country to be able to make money in the stock market.
Now that's it. You've given me my debating point. Market participants are saying today, we don't want any change in long-term capital gains tax. Currently at 10% for holding shares for 1 year and 15% as short-term capital gains tax, which is less than 1 year. Madhusudan says, keep it the same. Don't break it.
Yeah.
You break the, pardon me? He's saying, don't change the flow.
Yeah, because what he's also saying is that there is enough money coming into the capital
He's not wrong.
in any case.
He's not wrong, but governments can get greedy. Governments can get greedy.
So they shouldn't increase it for sure. But there's no need to reduce it. There were people who were saying that they need to reduce it.
Sushil, what do you think, Sushil? You hearing Madhusudan there? Or are you busy trading?
See, Arnab, I will have to concur with Madhu here, not just because birds of the same flock, flock together. See, what he's emphasizing, as far as I have understood, is we can also lose money and we can make money, and that does not change the requirement for any normal business people to have a realistic and rational system of taxation. So there are too many types of taxes, as if, while the Prime Minister has been perhaps one of the first leaders worldwide to emphasize that wealth creators are going to be respected in India, but that is yet to really reflect into reality. There are too many types of taxes we pay as if we are a burden by making money. So I concur with Madhu on this point that there's too much of different varieties of taxes we need to get to.
I'll ask Ajay, what do you think? You all concur that keep it the same, capital markets? Don't touch it, what's not broken?
See, Arnab, what happens in the developed markets that you get a 3-year, 5-year window, that there is policy continuity. So too much tinkering of taxes destroys sentiment. That's the big thing. Second, your foreign investor is not paying any tax. They are covered by double taxation avoidance agreement. Your retail investor pays tax. Your Madhu Kela pays tax, Sushil Kedia pays tax. So you have a very uneven or non-level playing field as it is. So business models are based on forecasts of taxes. People have made business models. If you keep on tinkering with that, then it destroys sentiment. That's the big thing, but that's the view of the 1% or the 0.1% of the 1%. The big issue is middle class needs a tax break. That has not happened from 2014.
You can give that without introducing changes in the capital markets.
Yeah, there is no connection. You have enough.
There is no connection between the two.
That is tax.
It's not,
Madhu and I are saying, you have so much bulging in your pockets. You have so much money that a small giveaway can be done for the middle class without, there is no connection in the two. The capital gains is a very small portion. Your STT is 36,000 crores. This year it will go to 60,000. It's a very decent tax. It's like Atal Bihari's 2 rupees on your petrol. Now we don't even remember that the cess is there. It just gets and roads get made of that. Now, same way STT is collected at source, put in the treasury, very neat, clean, no leakage. Everybody who trades in the market pays the STT. You're making 36,000 crores. You tinker with the small capital gains, people will not book the capital gains. The markets will move off the books. You will have dabba trading happening. People will go to the local shop and start trading there instead of your markets will get destabilized.
Madhu wanted to come back on that with what you're saying. Madhu.
Yeah. Arnav, see the moot point is we should not go by anyone's opinion. We should go by empirical facts. You see, the government has not tinkered in the tax, and we have the biggest buoyancy in taxes ever in the history of India. That the taxation, the tax kitty has grown by approximately 20%. So the taxation, the tax corpus doesn't grow by making sure that you charge higher taxes, but it grows only by complying to whatever stable tax regime which you have introduced. If there is a better compliance, I am sure there will be better taxation in India rather than living in this myth that you can increase taxes. You go back to the era when we had a higher capital gains, higher taxation on the corporate sector. What was the taxation amount we collected, and what are the taxation amount we are collecting today when our taxation are actually being lowered? So it is now about more compliance than about really making sure that taxation is higher. And why does the government need the money? They are in a very good situation. I don't think the government needs any more money. We will anyway be around 4.5%
elections are coming, they need
on
to
the
win
fiscal
elections.
deficit of
More
2026.
social schemes,
which
the
is a
kind
very
of
beautiful
stuff, Madhu, that
position
you
to
don't
be in.
worry about. You don't have to run a coalition government. They are running a coalition government.
No, trust me, my friend, they still have enough money. They have still enough money to satisfy everyone.
Trust
And
me,
you will see that
Madhu,
in
my
this budget.
friend, trust me, Madhu, you are very happy. Can you imagine, Madhu, if it was a 15-party coalition? Then we would make you finance minister of a 15-party coalition. We'd like to see how you distribute the money. How much money you give, which part of the,
Anyway,
Shawan wanted to say something.
That's my view. I reserve the right to be wrong.
Shawan has a point to make.
The government keeps saying that, they've done the heavy lifting all this while. The 2 terms, the heavy lifting has already been done. Time to basically shift.
There is a coalition government and
if there is a narrative, it is always that, why is it the corporates are not really spending? Why is it we are not boosting the consumption? See, it again goes back to the same drawing board that, look here, things won't really change.
Yeah.
Government will not have the elbow room further if the corporate spending also does not really go up.
Yeah. I think Madhu has to go. Madhu is looking at the markets and his watch. We'll let him go. Madhu, by the way, thank you for joining us. Ajay, you've been great. Stay on.
Thank you so much, Arnab.
Yeah. Look forward to seeing you later, maybe after the budget presentation. We are familiar friend, and right now we have the Managing Director and Founder of Equidus Capital Private Limited, Ajay Garg, with us this evening. Can I have him on air, please? Ajay, old friend, suddenly appears on screen. Sought after name, by the way. Sought after name on budget day. Pithy with his comments, a little cheeky, but people follow him because he's made some incredible investment decisions. And what I do know, Abhishek and Shawan, about Ajay is that, he's a long-term viewer of the Indian market story. And one of the reasons he's got his investments right is also because he looks at the overall picture of the Indian economy and not just from a capital markets perspective. So maybe we'll start with you, Ajay, on this one. Ajay, good morning. And it's
good morning, Arnab. So thanks, and that was a pretty elaborate introduction. I
know you guys. I know you. I know Ajay. I've had the privilege of knowing you all personally, and I know how practical and rational you are, and also how nationalistic you are about the India growth story. So Ajay, this time we've been talking to Madhusudan Kela, Ajay Bagga is still with us, and others. Sushil Kedia is also there. They say there's more money than the government has ever had. First of all, do you agree with that sentiment? Because there can never be enough money. And second,
no, there cannot be enough money because, I guess with a per capita tax collection of $250, $260, vis-a-vis, what you have in the case of US, which is $20,000 per capita. And aspirationally, in terms of public services, income level growth, capital expenditure requirement and all, I think the government needs to, with the discipline they have always maintained for the last 10 years, keep a very growth momentum and a fiscal consolidation, because both of them have to go hand in hand. The government has done a good, fine balancing act, but yes, the government can do with a lot more money. They also have to think through, because they're also enjoying a great capital market of, looking at sources outside the tax ambit in terms of things like, disinvestment. One of the idea which I also floated some time back is that why can't even railways be, listed in the market and the whole railway budget be financed by the market? So I would say that there are many more avenues to provide government the money because I think there is always in a global environment where businesses have a certain pressures to maintain their, numbers, taxing them beyond a point is difficult. We have a large part of the population which has a tax situation. So there are a lot of creative ways to get government more money, and I think that's the way one has to keep thinking about.
And if the government were to be looking at where it needs to spend the money to generate the employment, and also look at its own political considerations, where would that be?
So I think, they obviously need to look at, two ways of seeing how more jobs in manufacturing can be done, because I think the government did a lot of initiatives on the PLI side. And, we have, a government like this has also sort of, if I look at the type of projections we are seeing Apple, they're talking of something like close to 70,000 crores of revenue of manufacturing production the company could do in last 4-5 years. From a single situation. So there are many such opportunities out there. And I think the continuing investments in the PLI schemes, boosting the manufacturing, Also, sort of, they have to work on farm income too, and whatever ways that can be done to improve the productivity there and situations would be very helpful and needed for the country, because I think not only the economic growth, but economic growth which has inclusive, where has income growth levels at all levels will be the agenda the government should drive towards.
Yeah. Sushil, as far as the government is concerned, they say that you have a subdued agricultural sector right now. In terms of the biggest concerns that has been raised in the economic survey is about the job creation. But they also say that this is not a job that can be done all by the government itself. You will have to have the private sector coming in right now. It's high time for them to come into this big concern that they have about job creations. Sushil.
The job creations is something that, has been a element of greater politics than greater good. And economies that make such shifts, and where, our internal accounting on the hidden employment and hidden unemployment. So this remains more a political assessment than truly, a measure of any economic progress, because our data and our employment markets are not as organized as the West, but we try to mimic that. So I don't want to delve deep on this, except that, आदमी खोजने जाओ तो मिलता नहीं है. Domestic help in Bombay is not available at 25,000, and we are screaming about unemployment. So there is a vast, complex net of opportunities, missed opportunities, untrained people, ill-trained people, and exceptionally large capacity utilization, growth in the economy. So talking about employment for Indian situation
currently, vis-a-vis the frameworks with which we talk about them in the West, is absolutely inane.
Okay, viewers, I'll take a break at this point. Ajay Garg has given us an overall perspective. Sushil Kedia followed up with that. Ajay, we would trouble you once again on the other side of the break, so we'll reconnect in a bit. Viewers, short advertising break. This is the Budget 2024 pre-budget analysis with our expert panels across the country on Republic. See you here.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 private university in the recently released Education World Rankings. A testimony to Amity's globally benchmarked standards in education.
I'm the nominee of this party because 14 million Democrats like you voted for me in the primaries. You made me the nominee, no one else, not the press, not the pundits, not the insiders, not donors. You, the voters, you decided, no one else, and I'm not going anywhere.
A long time. The idea that I'm the old guy, I'm old, but I'm only 3 years older than Trump, number one. And number two, my mental acuity's been pretty damn good. I've gotten more done than any president has in a long, long time, in 3.5 years. So I'm willing to be judged on that. I understand why people say, God, he's 81 years old, whoa. What's he going to be when he's 83 years old or 84 years old? It's a legitimate question to ask.
Is there a sense of wanting to get back on the horse?
I'm on the horse. Where have you been? I've done 22 major events, met thousands of people, overwhelming crowds, a lot happening. I'm on the horse. What I'm doing is going out and demonstrating to the American people that I have command of all my faculties, that I don't need notes, I don't need teleprompter. I can go out and answer any questions at all. And I stood there when NATO was in town. I stood there for an hour and answered questions.
If you were to have continue to run and be officially nominated, what happens if you have another episode like we saw during the debate?
What happens if another?
Yeah, what happens if you have another performance on that par, on that level?
I had spoken about global factors, the introduction of artificial intelligence, the need to balance energy security and energy transition, and of course the imperatives of employment and skilling. Now this economic survey actually picks up on those themes. And more importantly, it tries to identify the areas and actions that we need to take such that these four important challenges can be addressed as best as possible.
News coming in, the cabinet meeting which is scheduled around 10:15 this morning. In fact, also you've had the opposition parties having their parliamentary meet at around the same time, around 10:30 this morning. Abhishek, with the Congress party also scheduling their parliamentary party meeting around 10:30. The cabinet meeting will be taking place around 10:15 this morning. That's the breaking news now coming in. Slipping at a short break as we continue with our coverage of the union budget.
All right, welcome back, friends. In fact, Ajay Garg and Sushil Kedia continue to be with us, and joining us in this section of the broadcast, Abhijit Roy. He's the managing director of Berger Paints. And as we get those pictures also of a finance minister perhaps reaching Rashtrapati Bhavan, if I could ask you, Mr. Roy, what are your expectations from the finance minister as she takes to the podium in about an hour's time?
I think the first expectation is that there will be a boost to demand, and the consumer demand has been a bit stagnant for the last 5-6 months, and we expect that there should be some sort of a tax break given to the consumers, which will push up demand to some extent. That's the first thing that is expected. Of course, infrastructure push along with the Prime Minister Awas Yojana. I think that will get an increased allocation and probably will continue as has been happening in the past few budgets. So those two things are expected. The rest, of course, in the rural areas, again, I think the government will continue to look at, how to increase the farmers' income. There's another, consumption driver as well. With the increase in consumption, there will be probably increase in capex of private companies as well, and then that is beneficial, and it sets off a virtuous cycle in terms of increased demand, increased investment, and therefore increased employment as well.
Right. Markets are, in fact, egging on the finance minister to make some big-ticket announcements so far as the consumption story is concerned. But if I could do a follow-up question with you, Mr. Roy, before I go back to Ajay and Sushil Kedia. You say that consumption has not been in the best of territory over the last 6-7 months. And of course, that's the picture everyone else is also talking about. But why, from your industry perspective, given that it's a contributing segment insofar as the larger construction industry is concerned, how you explain this dichotomy that the RBI says there is too much happening in the housing space, even the markets are reflecting that, the real estate sector, and yet is it not percolating down to your segment of the industry, the paints, given the fact that the housing market is actually doing well?
No, it's right, because in our case, in the paint, especially the household painting sector, 80% of the demand is from the repainting side, and 20% comes out of, 15 to 20% comes from the real estate new buildings. So new buildings are doing fine, and that is growing reasonably well. But the 80%, which is the repainting cycle, which is there, the repainting consumption has gone down a bit, largely because of, the income being restricted in the hands of consumers, and that's something which needs to be boosted a little bit, I think, in this budget.
Okay, what's that silver bullet, Ajay Garg, then, which can bring out the consumption story back on track, according to you?
I think it may not necessarily be addressed.
Or is there a silver bullet? Perhaps there is no silver bullet. There could be some measures.
It's very hard to, for a large country like India, to only find one bullet. That's a difficulty part of the complexities of this country. But if you were to look at it, one of the things which did impact, and it may not necessarily be covered in the budget, is that the interest rate scenario, which also was talked in the last economic report, that we do want to look at some relaxation there, which may obviously give a much more fillip in terms of, because I think one of the big factor which has impacted consumption is that a lot of in the housing sector, the mortgages costs have gone up. So people who did during post-COVID also look for a little bit of a better situation, suddenly realize that from loans they had contracted had gone up. So I think that has an impact on consumption. So I think that could be one way to help the segment where Mr. Roy works out of, that if a consumption can be improved by looking at the interest rate scenario. And this is not something which comes in the budget, but it's more of an RBI outlook, and hopefully that will happen subsequently.
Abhijit, I'll just bring back the focus on your sector, because for the government too, the clarion call has been housing for all. So that in itself would ensure some sort of a boost in the consumption, which would effectively have that the allied sectors would also benefit from it. So where is this entire narrative really emerging from, that, at the end of the day, it appears to be some sort of a, doomsday kind of a narrative that we've been peddling for some time now, that, there hasn't been any growth and perhaps that there isn't enough push?
No, so it's not a doomsday narrative as such. As I said, In our case, 80% is basically repainting demand, which is basically existing houses who paint every 5 to 6 years. The new house, consumption is about 15 to 20%. So this boost that is given by the government as far as projects are concerned, like the Prime Minister Awas Yojana, it does help. But 80 to 85% has also to kick in. Now if you look at the consumption GDP growth, it's been around 4%. That's the government figures, if you look at it. And whereas the investment GDP is growing at a much faster pace of about 10%. Overall GDP, therefore, is about that 7.5 odd percentage. And now the consumption GDP has to go up, then only the growth rate will further accelerate. And the way to do it is to have more income in the hands of consumers. And that's something both for rural and urban. As far as rural is concerned, I suppose, the government will do something there. As far as the urban market is concerned, taxation is one of the routes. If there are other routes which the government can think of to increase consumption, that's more than welcome.
Okay. Mr. Roy, just stay with us. I have one more follow-up question with you, but I have to tell our viewers the pictures that we are getting are from Rashtrapati Bhavan. This is the customary thing of Finance Minister presenting the budget to the President of India before it is submitted to the Cabinet for its approval. And the Finance Minister has reached there along with the MOS Pankaj Chaudhary and the rest of her team, the Finance Ministry bureaucrats, all the secretaries, the Finance Secretary, Revenue Secretary, Expenditure Secretary, Financial Services Secretary, all of them, the DIPAM Secretary, they are all there. And the Rashtrapati, the President, Draupadi Murmu, can be seen giving a bite of curd and perhaps sugar in it for the Finance Minister. That's also a very traditional thing to be doing, like it happens in many of our Indian homes, right. Shawan, when we have to appear in an exam, we take a bit of curd and sugar in it, and so that custom being followed there by the President with the Finance Minister. Those pictures there. She had done that during the vote on account also. Coming back to Mr. Roy, Abhijit Roy, you think that GST is one window which provides an opportunity for the paint industry, so for example, to come back and beat this demand consumption issue? Because I believe the GST in the paints segment is about 28%. Do you think that can help if it is brought down?
No, the GST is at 18%. So, I don't expect that, much of tinkering will happen as far as the GST rates are concerned in the paint segment. So, it's at a, level which is has been there for long years now. And I don't see that actually kicking up the demand in the paint sector.
Okay, fair enough. We'll look forward to what the Finance Minister has in store for you, Mr. Roy. But PK Basu also joining us on this broadcast, as also, of course, Sushil Skedia and Ajay Garg continue. We'll take a short break and come back. And, of course, everyone else continues to be with us.
Yeah, I mean, I think, she's had 4 years of experience in the White House, has seen the execution of the Biden policies, has been part of that. So I think for her to carry the torch makes sense.
I feel like, she didn't have a great track record running as president, and then Joe Biden selecting her as vice president, that was a choice as well too. I feel like people really need to get to know her more. Being the vice president doesn't give you the best, doesn't give you a huge limelight, you know what I mean? We don't really know what she's running on. It's very much Biden's policy, so it's now what is she gonna do, And then vice president on her end too, who would she pick as vice president? Well, for me, look, anything, my biggest thing is making sure that Trump doesn't get in the White House. So I feel like even if she was to become the nominee, I'm going to vote regardless, for her. But I really want to know too what her policies are. That's the big thing for me.
All right, these are pictures coming in straight from the Raisina Hill, where the carcade carrying finance minister and the budget in her hand is going downhill from there and on to the parliament, down to the Vijay Chowk, and then takes a left turn and goes to the parliament complex. Finance minister there leaving Rashtrapati Bhavan atop the Raisina as of now, goes down to the Vijay Chowk and then takes the turn towards Parliament complex. These are pictures coming in from New Delhi, from Raisina. Okay, and of course, so we'll keep tracking those pictures. She reaches the Parliament, and then there is a photo op at the gates. And then she goes inside, presents the budget to the cabinet approves it, and then of course a final presentation of the budget before the parliament. P.K. Basu is with us in the studios, and a familiar face, familiar voice on all things economics, right, Mr. Basu?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts? Is there any surprise? Are there any surprises possible? I mean, I've been thinking about it, Mr. Basu, that if the finance minister, with all these things going good for her, had something in a stable, she could have brought out during the vote on account and maybe had some electoral dividends. She did not do that. What do you think can be different this time?
Well, I think, first of all, vote on account, you can't really have significant tax changes. So tax changes, I think, will be an important aspect of what happens in the budget. Employment clearly is a major focus area, has to be a focus area.
Right.
Basically creating, I think labor-intensive manufacturing is the one conspicuous area of relative failure over the last decade.
Yeah.
The economy is growing. I think, the economic survey had a forecast of 6.5% to 7% growth for this year. I think that is way too conservative. The actual growth numbers likely to be around 8.5% in my view. So there's growth in the economy, but what is lacking is a real pickup in employment across the economy, but particularly in manufacturing. So, and that is not a phenomenon that is true of just the last 5 or 10 years. Since 2005, if you look at the CLEMS database, there's been very little growth. In fact, I go back all the way to 1980, and if you see the employment growth, it has stayed below population growth, below the working age population growth for 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And this is something that is now becoming a serious challenge and needs to be addressed. So I think
so something on jobs.
I think there should be more incentives for labor-intensive manufacturing. PLI extended to, to include incentives for employment and exports.
Let's look at how the jobs would come, because jobs come when there is consumption and hence production. So we are told the Blue Star MD B. Thiagarajan is joining us live, and very good morning to you, Mr. Thiagarajan. The fact that it's been a hot summer, unusually hot summer, would have given some tailwinds to your industry. You think At least for you, the consumption story has been good, and going forward, it's going to be good. What more the finance minister can do to help you?
Good morning. It's a pleasure interacting with you. As you may know, April was around 70% growth in air conditioner segment, and in May again 70%, and overall Q1 the industry would have grown more than 50%. This is coming at the back of the PLI scheme, which kick-started, while manufacturing jobs are yet to be created, at least in air conditioners and quite a few consumer durables categories. The growth is really happening, and the employment would have gone up close to around 100,000 already last year. Now, our estimate shows in about 5 years' time, by 2030, the industry will double, consumer durables industry. By 2047, we will overtake China. In that context, I am confining myself to consumer durables and electronics. We would look forward to three things. Number one is we have to build scale. For that, some more PLI schemes will be of help. Even if PLI is not there, we simply look forward to continuation of infrastructure development. And that 1 lakh crore rupees which was set aside for R&D and innovation, that is to be operationalized. And in order to grow our exports, to an extent you have to ease the component ecosystem. And the economic survey calls for selective FDI clearance from China. It is good because in the US we end up competing with Chinese players. So if they are following the law of the land, if they are going to invest, if they are going to do domestic value addition, it will help us to further improve our competitiveness. So consumer durable industry is looking forward to development in which the infrastructure improves so that we are able to bring down the logistics costs, R&D and innovation growth. And we are excited about what is happening already. We will move forward towards a globally competitive industry from India, which can play a significant role in exports.
Yes, Mr. Tyagarajan, good morning. This is Arnab here. I totally agree with your sentiments there. Please stay on with us. I'm also joined by Niranjan Hiranandani right now. Ajay Garg is continuing to be with us. Viewers, while we are doing this, keep one thing in mind, that this is a fantastic time, we're talking about sectors, but at the end of the day, we are all vested in the India story. IMF has upgraded its economic forecast for India in 2024. The world, growth will dip the following year. So we need to make the best when things are good. We are expected to grow at 7%, higher than April's projection of 6.8%. That is tremendous. What can we do to make sure we make the best of a good year ahead? Niranjan.
Good morning, Arnab. Glad to meet you up again. I wanted to share with you that let's hear the China story. The double-digit growth of China beyond 12% took in the years when you focused on real estate and housing.
Yes.
I think and also job employment. Two aspects of it need to be covered in this budget. Number one, we need to put in much, much more into affordable housing. It has had a setback in the last 1 year. And I think the PMAY scheme will come back. We expect a 60,000 crore commitment in this budget for affordable housing, which will boost the economy. And I think the 7 and 8% will go to 9 or 10% if they can do that. Number two, we are very, very, very short of skill sets. In my industry, when I want 100 skilled workers, I get only 20 now. If we can get the skilling done, the job and unemployment issues which are there is going to be taken care of by the growth in infrastructure and housing. I think that's a story that it needs to be repeated because the skill sets are certainly not keeping up with the times. Industry is trying its best, government is trying its best, not enough. So I think these two aspects of it, if we do, you can even think of 8-9% GDP growth in the next 1 year rather than 7 and 8% that you're talking about. Number two, the housing this year has grown by 12% growth in the last 1 year from the last year's high figure also. So I think that can take another thing which goes up. Infrastructure, not only of the national highways, but also urban infrastructure needs to be boosted still further. Yes, Mumbai has got 300 kilometers of metro going to be added in the next 2 years.
Yes.
The Cross Harbour Bridge, the coastal road, all this and more is needed. But the periphery of Mumbai, the outer segments also needs a push up, along with the Adani Airport, which is coming up at Navi Mumbai. I think this and more is needed in order to meet the headwinds that may happen in the international market. I think India's story itself will be a great one.
Well, that's absolutely agree. I like to look at the big picture on days like this, Niranjan, Mr. Tyagarajan. PK loves it as well. And since I have 4 such eminent panelists here, I want to go to one of my pet subjects, which also was referred to in the economic survey. Ajay, briefly, we say the US wants to de-risk from China. The US wants to decouple from China. We have seen depressed China numbers, 4.8%. We don't know if it is a continuous trend. We must understand they are not a democracy. They can do things which we cannot. You know, they can make moves which we cannot. But here also is an opportunity, and I thought it was very, very prescient of PK, before I come to Ajay, of this to be mentioned in the economic survey. You know, so we need to take advantage of that, this moment that the world is seeing vis-a-vis China.
So, you see, what China is now facing is overcapacity across all industries and massive overcapacity in real estate. There is no final demand for real estate because there's almost everybody in China owns 2 or 3 or 4 houses or apartments, and everybody wants to sell the second, third, and fourth. And therefore, you've got what China is facing is growth that cannot be sustained. You cannot really have 4 to 5% growth in China even on a sustained basis going forward.
But everybody's saying China plus one now.
So that's one. The other aspect is that China has alienated everybody else. Everybody else has come to the conclusion that China is dumping its overcapacity and has been doing this for 15 years until 5 years ago. The rest of the world was oblivious to this situation. But now we are trying to ensure, almost every country is trying to ring fence its domestic market.
But we have a unique problem. We are also their biggest import.
No, we are a huge source. See, now the interesting thing is that we have an enormous bilateral trade deficit of over $90 billion annually with China. So what the economic survey advocates is that we should, in fact, encourage Chinese companies to import substitutes, to produce more in India, rather than to simply import components.
Also, just to Mr. Tyagarajan, if you can also come into this, because the argument here is that how do you really do this? Dip into the supply chain, because that's where the key area is, where India could actually play a pivotal role.
Arnab, the China plus one, we are making an assumption that plus one is India. So when I talk to a European supply chain manager or an American supply chain manager, they are looking forward to a product which is of highest quality at the lowest price, which China is able to do because of domestic scale. So principle number one, domestic scale should be built. Number two, we are not at global quality standards at all. Lot more to be done for us to improve the quality standards. And the government has made certain initiatives. Now, take for example air conditioners. China's domestic market is around 85 million. They produce, including their exports, 120 million. India has crossed only 12 million. So 12 million to 140, if you are to look at it, that scale is formidable. In that event, we should innovate. And our R&D expenses for as a country is less than 0.65% of GDP. So therefore, we have to focus on building domestic scale. 2, we have to improve the quality standards. 3, we have to innovate substantially. 4, we have to add substantial value addition, which is happening in some industries which received PLI scheme. Now, PLI scheme is not bad for the simple reason the incentive is not paid based on production. Incentive is paid on incremental sales. In order to earn PLI, I have to go ahead and dilute this money. Eventually, PLI money goes to the consumers. So we have to pick those sectors where, in order to beat China's competitiveness, for improving domestic value addition, we will have to bring in PLI schemes. And in air conditioner industry, it has worked, and something more can be done in order to reach that last mile of another 20% value addition will have to take place. Same way, we can identify the sectors, and I'm confident that we will be able to become a formidable player replacing China. Wondering that China plus one should happen because countries do not want to do with China is incorrect. We have to deserve to export. That's all I would like to say.
Well, that's very interesting. Viewers, the economic survey this time has actually recommended that Chinese FDI is an alternative, rather than the present strategy, and that will boost our exports. China plus one is a talking point tonight. We are also getting Indian entrepreneurs, and we have the very dynamic Harsh Jain of Grow joining us today. Harsh, you founded a company, you lead a company, and you've done exceptionally well in the last 1 year. What do companies like yours, look forward to in this budget?
Yeah, thanks, Arnab. See, two phenomena that's happening in the country and very important to look at is one is the advent of digital, innovations, and there's a lot more digital infrastructure that we need to invest in, whether it is about cyber security or artificial intelligence or even electric vehicle automobiles infrastructure. So this investment, I'm looking forward to some more movements happening towards this. Second is, when we see our country, there are a lot of young people now who are, India is a very young country. Now, once, few years from now, there will be issues and these all get told. Now, we should have some investment, some thought process done for incentivizing them to have retirement plans. So anything that is coming to encourage savings investments for a longer term, kind of planning how they should be in the 10 years, 20 years, that will also be a great, this will be a great help to the country.
So it's very fascinating right now that we have four very interesting and diverse personalities. Niranjan Hiranandani, tycoon of the real estate sector. We have P.K. Basu, I consider him one of the best macroeconomic voices of the country. Mr. Tyagarajan is such an experienced gentleman. He's managing director of Blue Star. He's there joining us from CII. He understands that space. He's a doyen of Indian industry. And I have Harsh Jain. So all very four different business individuals. Sharmila, I'd like you to take this forward with Harsh, because Harsh represents for me that whole startup space in this on this panel. And as we all know, Harsh, I think, was a part of the founding team at Flipkart. He's seen companies grow. So I'd like you to take it forward in that sense from him, what the unicorns, entrepreneurs are looking at today.
Yes, sir, the climate is wonderful for investments, for new businesses, startups. Clearly, the funding winter is over. Harsh, what is your take on young entrepreneurs, young Indians wanting to fund their dreams?
Yeah.
So a lot more is happening already, and we've been the beneficiary. The whole startup industry has been growing really well. One area where I would like to see our country do really well is the high-tech side. If you look at the US market and you look at the companies which are about $1 trillion, none of, all of them are very high-tech, whether it's about the silicon or it's about the big techs like Google and Apple, Meta of the world. So more plans around that will definitely help encourage entrepreneurs to take larger bets, will encourage entrepreneurs to take more interest in the high-tech industry. So I would really want to see how we focus on that. There's another initiative which is really good, which is happening on the gift city side. Last few years, there's a lot of development, but this budget should give more clarity to the techs. Rebates there, even the incentive plans, what kind of industry should come in and will have better prospects there. So that gives us an advantage to bring a lot of money back to the country where we can use it.
So, please go on.
I also wanted to ask you that, Indian startups have been, for a long time been dependent on international funding agents like SoftBank, etc. But we see a tendency towards self-reliance. And there is a lot of IPO movement in the country. Do you think the Indian startups can sustain through the IPO route? Is the climate good enough? What is your take?
No, extremely happy to see two trends. One is a lot of state governments have started their own, angel and startup funds where they have been encouraging early stage. And a lot of entrepreneurs who are the second, they're in second life, basically they have done their startups, they have taken exits, they have become angel investors and venture capitalists. So money has started flowing in from Indian companies to Indian startups. That's a good change, but I would still want to see a lot more happening there. Because if you want to take, there is one is the, having the money to be able to invest in startups, and second is the risk appetite. So still, there's a lot more work needs to be done on the risk appetite and taking a larger bets, encouraging a lot more on the new developments, which are very early stage, building startup ecosystem right from college, and that we have seen from schools like Stanford and all. A lot more has happened from IIT and good big engineering colleges in India also. They should continue doing that.
Absolutely. Going back to Mr. Tyagarajan, and this next 15 minutes, we are looking closely at what India Inc. wants from the budget. And Mr. Tyagarajan, S&P is giving us an upgrade after 14 years. I want to keep going back to that recurrent theme. Unfortunately, the political environment, some people think is not as stable today as it was maybe 4 months back. PK can disagree with that. But basically, the world is saying one thing about India. They are saying you have sound economic fundamentals, right? And very good growth momentum. You've taken very good decisions. In fact, Mr. Tyagarajan, I don't think it has ever been better through my journalistic career of more than 25 years. And I think S&P now saying we are actually expecting improvement beyond this for the next 2 years. So everyone on my morning panel has said continuity, continuity. We just continue the way you are. Is there anything we can do differently? Or anything we should watch out for?
Arnab, they are also saying that finally India has arrived.
Yes.
So when you visit Europe, when you visit United States, I see a distinct difference in the past 5-6 years that India has arrived and India has a role to play in the global economy. Now, I do not think we should do something differently at all. We should continue with our theme of infrastructure building, capability building, and taking us to the next leap of growth with ambitious and aspirational goals. Now, from the companies, we were not used to thinking about setting up factories which can make 2 million units. 4 years ago, if you asked me, an air conditioner factory which is going to make 5 lakh units was a big thing. Today we are talking about can we look at 2 million units, 5 million units, can we acquire 100 acres of land, where 20 acres was a big question mark 5 years ago. So there is a big mind shift change that has happened. Now, according to me, it is the last mile that we have to cross in the consumer durables sector. It is again to do with coming to terms with the scale and behave like the big players. 2, go ahead and invest in R&D and innovation. 3, learn to compete by producing products that are world-class quality. Now, I do not think the government can do anything in that except keep providing us a good infrastructure and keep providing or improving the ease of doing business in terms of import restrictions in certain components, etc. The industry ask is very, very simple. We are migrating to that we can now beat China in about 10 to 15 years' time. There is absolutely no problem.
That's incredible. And Goldman Sachs actually has forecast world economic growth by 2075. And they're saying India can pip US, Germany to that position. So yes, I think what you're saying is think big, build scale, behave like the big boys. But there are uncertainties, PK. I want to take, are there any uncertainties in that DK Srivastava is Chief Policy Advisor at EY, Ernst & Young? Are there any uncertainties that we'd also need to factor in, Mr. Srivastava? Good morning.
Good morning, good morning. Well, the main uncertainty actually emanates from the global economy. That uncertainty is likely to continue in the medium term, and therefore we have to plan very largely on domestic strategy for sustaining growth. The story that is being led through infrastructure development needs to be completed possibly from this budget, in the sense that we need higher multipliers associated with infrastructure investment.
You say only external, but what about
purpose?
What about internal challenges? I'm also looking, I know corporates won't talk about it. If I ask Niranjan, he will keep mum on it. Even Tyaga will not talk much about it. But the fact is that we have a very, very polarized polity. We are getting towards a monsoon session of Parliament, PK, and it's going to be crazy, let me tell you, and political tension in this country has never been greater. Is that a factor, or it'll be handled?
It is certainly a factor.
How?
The factor is, obviously in
Tyagu is saying on it. Tyagarajan is talking about it. No, I'm not going to miss this moment. Come back to you. Yes, please, Tyagu, coming back to you. Yeah. Is it a factor?
See, I am of the view that the labor reforms, new wage code, that has to be operationalized by the states, setting aside the political differences.
Right.
Because we are at one end talking about inclusive growth, other end we are talking about also consumption growth. Now the laws, the bills that have been passed are landmark ones, and it is time we go ahead and implement that. It is, according to me, very important. Now I'm not getting into politics. We had talked about it earlier. In e-commerce world, FDI in multi-brand retail, if it can generate employment within set rules, I think we should go ahead and implement that. And the third part is connected with one more contentious issue, not only within India, internationally. If India is going to grow, what happens to the carbon footprint? Now, the LIFE program, that is Lifestyle for Environment, and green credit schemes of Prime Minister Modi are brilliant schemes. It's path-breaking ones. Now, you can encourage consumption of environmentally sustainable products. In my case, a 5-star air conditioner, okay, you are not able to reduce the GST, but if you are going to give a green credit which can be encashed by people, it is good for the economy. So innovative schemes and bills are already in place. So these are issues without getting into political differences,
which can be sorted. No, I know you're looking at the glass as half full.
Globally competitive.
No, you're looking at the glass as half full. What I'm trying to say, however, is that, for example, Moody's, which says that you are at BA3, P3, which means the basic signal is you're stable. You're signaling stability, but it is saying that there are escalating political tensions in India. I know the checks and balances are not there. Our long-term growth trajectory could be affected by these things. Could they? Or is this an external perspective on India? We here in India know it's part of the story. We've handled instability for 25 to 30 years, but are the expectations different now?
Well, I think first of all, this government has delivered macroeconomic stability and has delivered a macroeconomic situation which positions India for much faster growth. The current account deficit was 0.7% of GDP last fiscal year. The latest quarter, there was a current account surplus. Inflation is coming down. There is a significant problem with vegetable prices and vegetable inflation. But otherwise, core inflation is at 3.1% in the last couple of months. So, macroeconomic stability is a major factor. Now, there is a difference between the opposition's approach to fiscal stance and the government stance. And this is a fiscally conservative government that is focused on bringing the fiscal deficit down. I think this year the fiscal deficit will be around 4.5% of GDP. although the forecast in the budget will probably still be around 4.8 or something like that. We're already at 4.8%. If you look at the 12-month moving average of the fiscal deficit, already at 4.8%. So revenue is very strong. There's the extra dividend from the RBI,
No, that's
which
as of
which
today.
has helped.
But PK,
so all
PK,
of this
but
helps.
PK,
Now,
PK.
But if you look at what the opposition wants,
they want wealth
opposition wants
redistribution. They want private sector
more-
reservation.
Yeah.
They want further delegation of powers to the states.
Okay, now, as far as the politics of India is concerned, for the next 5 years, we can be reasonably sure that this government is in place. But this government needs to deliver on the employment agenda above everything else. In my view, the significant factor that made a big difference in the last election is the perception that employment is not being created rapidly
they
enough.
need to make
and
the
there
right-
is no doubt that not just this year,
I want
but I'd say
Niranjan to
for
comment
20
on that.
years,
Yeah.
we've had a problem.
I think that's
with
the point. They
employment
have
creation.
to they have to balance
scale.
these things out. Yeah.
And with regard
Let's
to
get
scale,
Niranjan in because before
Mr. Tyagarajan talked about scale in consumer durables. There's scale that can be achieved in basic labor-intensive manufacturing. I think one of the interesting things is that this government,
but you can't make labor
got
change.
new labor laws.
Yeah.
New labor laws
Okay.
were passed by Parliament.
Okay, I have to take a
4
short
years
break.
ago.
Before that,
They
I'll
need
get
to be notified.
I'll get a comment from 30-second comment from Niranjan before I go into break. Niranjan.
Arnab, I think the focus which Mr. Basu talked about, employment is important. If I was the finance minister, I would focus on tourism. I would focus on textiles. I would focus on real estate. I would focus on infra and on services. But more important than all that, I would focus on skilling. I would focus on upskilling, and I would focus on reskilling. If you can do that, then with the growth of the economy, which is already there, all this will meet the employment needs of the country simultaneously. And we will be having a better employment situation along with the growth of GDP and per capita GDP growth. Arnab, this is what I would do if I was the finance minister.
Absolutely. And before I go into the break, I want to go to the visuals of the finance minister. We've got it on the Hindi channel. We can quickly get it up with the President of India. Viewers, so this is a 37-minute run-up to the presentation of the Union Budget. There the visuals are. Our production team has got it right now. And I think the stage is now set. Ladies and gentlemen,
Bharat Small Reactors. 2. Research and development of Bharat Small Modular Reactor. And 3. Research and development of newer technologies for nuclear energy. The R&D funding announced in the interim budget will be made available for this sector also. Advanced ultra supercritical thermal power plants. The development of indigenous technology for advanced ultra supercritical thermal power plants with much higher efficiency has been completed. A joint venture between NTPC and BHEL will set up a full-scale 800 megawatt commercial plant using AUSC technology. The government will provide the required fiscal support. Moving forward, development of indigenous capacity for the production of high-grade steel and other advanced metallurgy materials for these plants will result in strong spin-off benefits for the economy. Roadmap for hard-to-abate industries. A roadmap for moving the hard-to-abate industries from energy efficiency targets to emission targets will be formulated. Appropriate regulations for transition of these industries from the current perform, achieve, and trade mode to Indian carbon market mode will be put in place. Support to traditional micro and small industries. An investment-grade energy audit of traditional micro and small industries in 60 clusters, including brass and ceramic, will be facilitated. Financial support will be provided for shifting them to cleaner forms of energy and implementation of energy efficiency measures. The scheme will be replicated in another 100 clusters in the next phase. Priority 7, infrastructure investment by central government. Significant investment the central government has made over the years in building and improving infrastructure has had a strong multiplier effect on the economy. We will endeavor to maintain strong fiscal support for infrastructure over the next 5 years in conjunction with imperatives of other priorities and fiscal consolidation. This year, I have provided 11,11,111 crore rupees for capital expenditure. This would be 3.4% of our GDP. Infrastructure investment by state governments. We will encourage states to provide support of similar scale for infrastructure, subject to their development priorities. A provision of 1.5 lakh crore rupees for long-term interest-free loans have been made this year also to support the states in their resource allocation. Private investment in infrastructure. Investment in infrastructure by private sector will be promoted through viability gap funding and enabling policies and regulations. A market-based financing framework will be brought out. Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana, Phase 4 of the PMGSY will be launched to provide all-weather connectivity to 25,000 rural habitations, which have become eligible in view of their population increase. Irrigation and flood mitigation. Bihar has frequently suffered from floods, many of them originating outside the country. Plans to build flood control structures in Nepal are yet to progress. Our government, through the Accelerated Irrigation Benefit Program and other sources, will provide financial support for projects with estimated cost of 11,500 crore rupees, such as the Kosi-Michi intra-state link and 20 other ongoing and new schemes, including barrages, river pollution abatement, and irrigation projects. In addition, survey and investigation of Kosi-related flood mitigation and irrigation projects will be undertaken. Assam grapples with floods every year by the Brahmaputra River and its tributaries originating outside India. We will provide assistance to Assam for flood management and related projects. Himachal Pradesh suffered extensive losses due to floods last year. Our government will provide assistance to the state for reconstruction and rehabilitation through multilateral development assistance. Uttarakhand too suffered losses due to cloudbursts and massive landslides. We will provide assistance to the state. Recently, Sikkim witnessed devastating flash floods and landslides that wreaked havoc across the state. Our government will provide assistance to the state. Tourism has always been a part of our civilization. Our efforts in positioning India as a global tourist destination will also create jobs, stimulate investments, and unlock economic opportunities for other sectors. In addition to the measures outlined in the interim budget, I propose the following measures. Vishnupad Temple at Gaya and Mahabodhi Temple at Bodh Gaya in Bihar are of immense spiritual significance. Comprehensive development of Vishnupad Temple Corridor and Mahabodhi Temple Corridor will be supported, modeled on the successful Kashi Vishwanath Temple Corridor to transform them into world-class pilgrim and tourist destinations. Rajgir holds immense religious significance for Hindus, Buddhists, and Jains. The 20th Tirthankara Muniswarata Temple in the Jain temple complex is ancient. The Saptarishi, or the 7 hot springs, form a warm water Brahmkund that is sacred. A comprehensive development initiative for Rajgir will be undertaken. Our government will support the development of Nalanda as a tourist center, besides reviving Nalanda University to its glorious stature. Odisha's scenic beauty, temples, monuments, craftsmanship, wildlife sanctuaries, natural landscapes, and pristine beaches make it an ultimate tourism destination. Our government will provide assistance for their development to Odisha as well. Priority 8, innovation, research, and development. We will operationalize the Anusandhan National Research Fund for basic research and prototype development. Further, we will set up a mechanism for spurring private sector-driven research and innovation at commercial scale, where the financing pool of 1 lakh crore rupees in line with the announcement in the interim budget. Space economy. With our continued emphasis on expanding the space economy by 5 times in the next 10 years, a venture capital fund of 1,000 crore rupees will be set up. Priority 9, next generation reforms. Economic policy framework. We will formulate an economic policy framework to delineate the overarching approach to economic development and set the scope of the next generation of reforms for facilitating employment opportunities and sustaining high growth. Our government will initiate and incentivize reforms for 1. Improving productivity of factors of production, and 2. Facilitating markets and sectors to become more efficient. These reforms will cover all factors of production, namely land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, and technology as an enabler of improving total factor productivity and bridging inequality. Effective implementation of several of these reforms requires collaboration between the center and the states and building consensus as development of the country lies in development of the states. For promoting competitive federalism and incentivizing states for faster implementation of reforms, I propose to earmark a significant part of the 50-year interest-free loan. Working with the states, we will initiate the following reforms. Land-related reforms and actions, both in the rural and urban areas, will cover land administration, will cover 1. Land administration, planning and management, and 2. Urban planning usage and building bylaws. These will be incentivized for completion within the next 3 years through appropriate fiscal support. Rural land-related actions. Rural land-related actions will include 1. Assignment of unique land parcel identification number, UL PIN, or Bhu Aadhaar for all lands. 2. Digitization of cadastral maps. 3. Survey of subdivisions, survey of map subdivisions as per current ownership. 4. Establishment of land registry. And 5. Linking to the farmers registry. These actions will also facilitate credit flow and other agricultural services. Urban land-related actions. Land records in urban areas will be digitized with GIS mapping. An IT-based system for property record administration, updating, and tax administration will be established. These will also facilitate improving the financial position of urban local bodies. Labor-related reforms. Services to labor. Our government will facilitate the provision of a wide array of services to labor, including those for employment and skilling. A comprehensive integration of e-Shram portal with other portals will facilitate such one-stop solution. Open architecture databases for the rapidly changing labor market, skill requirements, and available job roles, and a mechanism to connect job aspirants with potential employers and skill providers will be covered in these services. Shram Suvidha and Samadhan portal. Shram Suvidha and Samadhan portal will be revamped to enhance ease of compliance for industry and trade. Capital and entrepreneurship related reforms, financial sector vision and strategy. For meeting financing needs of the economy, our government will bring out a financial sector vision and strategy document to prepare the sector in terms of size, capacity, and skills. This will set the agenda for the next 5 years and guide the work of the government, regulators, financial institutions, and market participants. Taxonomy for climate finance. We will develop taxonomy for climate finance for enhancing the availability of capital for climate adaptation and mitigation. This will support achievement of the country's climate commitments and green transition. Variable capital company structure. We will seek the required legislative approval for providing an efficient and flexible mode for financing leasing of aircrafts and ships and pooled funds of private equity through a variable company structure. Foreign direct investments and overseas investment. The rules and regulations for foreign direct investment and overseas investments will be simplified to 1. Facilitate foreign direct investments, 2. Nudge prioritization, and 3. Promote opportunities for using Indian rupee as a currency for overseas investment. NPS Vatsalya. NPS Vatsalya, a plan for contribution by parents and guardians for minors, will be started. On attaining the age of majority, the plan can be converted seamlessly into a normal NPS account. Use of technology. We have successfully used technology for improving productivity and bridging inequality in our economy during the past 10 years. Public investment in digital infrastructure and innovations by the private sector have helped in improving access of all citizens, particularly the common people, to market resources, education, health and services. We will step up adoption of technology towards digitalization of the economy. Ease of doing business. For enhancing ease of doing business, we are already working on the Jan Vishwas Bill 2.0. Further, states will be incentivized for implementation of the business reforms, action plans, and digitalization. Data and statistics. For improving data governance, collection, processing and management of data and statistics, different sectoral databases, including those established under the Digital India Mission, will be utilized with active use of technology tools. New pension scheme. The committee to review the NPS has made considerable progress in its work. I'm happy that the staff side of the National Council of the Joint Consultative Machinery for Central Government Employees has taken a constructive approach. A solution will be evolved which addresses the relevant issues while maintaining fiscal prudence to protect the common citizens. Budget estimates for 24-25. For the year 24-25, total receipts other than borrowings and the total expenditure are estimated at 32.07 lakh crore rupees and 48.21 lakh crore rupees respectively. The net tax receipts are estimated at 25.83 lakh crore rupees. The fiscal deficit is estimated at 4.9% of the GDP. The gross and the net market borrowings through dated securities during 24-25 are estimated at 14.01 lakh crore rupees and 11.63 lakh crore rupees respectively. Both will be less than that in 23-24. The fiscal consolidation path announced by me in 2021 has served our economy very well, and we aim to reach the deficit below 4.5% next year. The government is committed to staying the course. From 2026-27 onwards, our endeavor will be to keep the fiscal deficit each year such that the central government's debt will be on a declining path as percentage of GDP. I will now move to Part B. Indirect taxes. Sir, I start with GST. It has decreased tax incidence on the common man, reduced compliance burden and logistics cost for trade and industry, and enhanced revenues of the central and the state governments. It is a success of vast proportions. To multiply the benefits of GST, we will strive to further simplify and rationalize the tax structure and endeavor to expand it to the remaining sectors. My proposals for customs duties intend to support domestic manufacturing, deepen local value addition, promote export competitiveness, and simplify taxation while keeping the interest of the general public and consumers surmount. In Budget 22-23, we reduced the number of customs duty rates. I propose to undertake a comprehensive review of the rate structure over the next 6 months to rationalize and simplify it for ease of trade, removal of duty inversion, and reduction of disputes. I shall now take up sector-specific customs duty proposals. Medicine and medical equipments. To provide relief to cancer patients, I propose to fully exempt 3 more medicines from customs duties. I also propose changes in the BCD on X-ray tubes and flat panel detectors for use in medical X-ray machines under the phased manufacturing program so as to synchronize them with the domestic capacity addition. Mobile phone and related parts. With a 3-fold increase in domestic production and almost a 100-fold jump in exports of mobile phones over the last 6 years, the Indian mobile industry has matured. In the interest of consumers, I now propose to reduce the BCD on mobile phone, mobile PCBA, and mobile charger to 15%. Critical minerals. Minerals such as lithium, copper, cobalt, and rare earth elements are critical for sectors like nuclear energy, renewable energy, space, defense, telecommunications, and high-tech electronics. I propose to fully exempt customs duties on 25 critical minerals and reduce BCD on 2 of them. This will provide a major fillip to the processing and refining of such minerals and help secure their availability for these strategic and important sectors. Solar energy. Energy transition is critical in the fight against climate change. To support energy transition, I propose to expand the list of exempted capital goods for use in the manufacture of solar cells and panels in the country. Further, in view of sufficient domestic manufacturing capacity of solar gas, glass, and tinned copper interconnect, I propose not to extend the exemption of custom duties provided to them. Marine products. India's seafood exports in the last financial year touched an all-time high of more than 60,000 crores of rupees. Frozen shrimp accounted for about 2/3 of these exports. To enhance their competitiveness, I propose to reduce BCD on certain broodstock, polychaete worms, shrimp, and fish feed to 5%. I also propose to exempt customs duty on various inputs for manufacture of shrimp and fish feed. Leather and textile. Similarly, to enhance the competitiveness of exports in the leather and textile sectors, I propose to reduce BCD on real down-filling material from duck or goose. I am also making additions to the list of exempted goods for manufacture of leather and textile garments, footwear, and other leather articles for export. To rectify inversion in duty, I propose to reduce BCD subject to conditions on methylene diphenyl diisocyanate MDI for manufacture of spandex yarn from 7.5 to 5%. Furthermore, the export duty structure on raw hides, skin, and leather is proposed to be simplified and rationalized. Precious metals. To enhance domestic value addition in gold and precious metal jewelry in the country, I propose to reduce customs duties on gold and silver to 6% and that of platinum to 6.4%. Other metals, steel and copper are important raw materials. To reduce their cost of production, I propose to remove the BCD on ferronickel and blister copper. I am also continuing with nil BCD on ferrous scrap and nickel cathode and concessional BCD of 2.5% on copper scrap. Electronics. To increase value addition in the domestic electronics industry, I propose to remove the BCD subject to conditions on oxygen-free copper for manufacture of resistors. I also propose to exempt certain parts for manufacture of connectors. Chemicals and petrochemicals. To support existing and new capacities in the pipeline, I propose to increase the BCD on ammonium nitrate from 7.5% to 10%. Plastics. PVC flex banners are non-biodegradable and hazardous for environment and health. To curb their imports, I propose to raise the BCD on them from 10 to 25%. Telecommunication equipment. To incentivize domestic manufacturing, I propose to increase the BCD from 10 to 15% on PCBA of specified telecom equipment. Trade facilitation. To promote domestic aviation and boat and ship MRO, I propose to extend the period for export of goods imported for repairs from 6 months to 1 year. I'll read that again. To promote domestic aviation and boat and ship maintenance, repair and operations, I propose to extend the period for export of goods imported for repairs from 6 months to 1 year. In the same vein, I propose to extend the time limit for re-import of goods for repairs under warranty from 3 to 5 years. I now move to direct taxes. We will continue our efforts to simplify taxes, improve taxpayer services, provide tax certainty, and reduce litigation while enhancing revenues for funding the development and welfare schemes of the government. It has been our endeavor to simplify taxation. We have taken a number of measures in the last few years, including introduction of simplified tax regimes without exemptions and deductions for corporate tax and for personal income tax. This has been appreciated by taxpayers. 58% of corporate tax came from the simplified tax regime in the financial year 22-23. Similarly, as per data available till now, for the last fiscal, more than 2/3 have availed the new personal income tax regime. Comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act. I am now announcing a comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act 1961. The purpose is to make the Act concise, lucid, easy to read and understand. This will reduce disputes and litigation, thereby providing tax certainty to the taxpayers. I will also bring down the demand embroiled in litigation. It is proposed to be completed in 6 months. A beginning is being made in the finance bill by simplifying the tax regime for charities, tedious rate structures, provisions of reassessment and such provisions, and capital gains taxation. Simplification for charities and tedious. Two tax exemption regimes. The two tax exemption regimes for charities are proposed to be merged into one. The 5% TDS rate on many payments is being merged into the 2% TDS rate, and the 20% TDS rate on repurchase of units by mutual funds or UTI is being withdrawn. TDS rate on e-commerce operators is proposed to be reduced from 1 to 0.1%. Moreover, credit of TCS is proposed to be given in the TDS to be deducted on salary. Further, I propose to decriminalize delay for payment of TDS up to the due date of filing statement for the same. I also plan to provide a standard operating procedure for TDS defaults and simplify and rationalize the compounding guidelines for such defaults. Simplification of reassessment. I propose to thoroughly simplify the provisions for reopening and reassessment. An assessment hereinafter can be reopened beyond 3 years from the end of the assessment year only if the escaped income is 50 lakh rupees or more, up to a maximum period of 5 years from the end of the assessment year. Even in such cases, a time limit of 6 years before the year of the search, as against the existing time limit of 10 years, is being proposed. This will reduce tax uncertainty and disputes. Simplification and rationalization of capital gains. Capital gains taxation is also proposed to be hugely simplified. Short-term gains on certain financial assets shall henceforth attract a tax rate of 20%, while that on all other financial assets and all non-financial assets shall continue to attract the applicable tax rate. Long-term gains on all financial and non-financial assets, on the other hand, will attract a tax rate of 12.5%. For the benefit of the lower and the middle income classes, I propose to increase the limit of exemption of capital gains on certain financial assets to 1.25 lakh rupees per year. Listed financial assets held for more than a year will be classified as long-term, while unlisted financial assets and all non-financial assets will have to be held for at least 2 years to be classified as long-term. Unlisted bonds and debentures, debt mutual funds, and market-linked debentures, irrespective of holding period, however, will attract tax on capital gains at applicable rates. Taxpayer services. All the major taxpayer services under GST and most services under customs and income tax have been digitalized. All remaining services of customs and income tax, including rectification and order, shall be digitalized and made paperless over the next 2 years. Litigation and appeals. While our concerted efforts to reduce pendency of appeals at various appellate fora are beginning to show good results, it will continue to engage our highest attention. To dispose of the backlog of first appeals, I plan to deploy more officers to hear and decide such appeals, especially those with large tax effect. For resolution of certain income tax disputes pending an appeal, I am also proposing Vivad Se Vishwas Scheme 2024. Further, I propose to increase monetary limits for filing appeals related to direct taxes, excise and service tax in the tax tribunals, high courts and Supreme Court to 60 lakh rupees, 2 crore rupees and 5 crore respectively, with a view to reduce litigation and provide certainty in international taxation. We will expand the scope of safe harbor rules and make them more attractive. We will also streamline the transfer pricing assessment procedure. Employment and investment. I have a few proposals to promote investment and foster employment. First of all, to bolster the Indian startup ecosystem, boost the entrepreneurial spirit, and to support innovation, I propose to abolish the so-called angel tax for all classes of investors. Second, there is tremendous potential for cruise tourism in India. To give a fillip to this employment-generating industry, I am proposing a simpler tax regime for foreign shipping companies operating domestic cruises in the country. Third, India is a world leader in the diamond cutting and polishing industry, which employs a large number of skilled workers. To further promote the development of this sector, we would provide for safe harbor rates for foreign mining companies selling raw diamonds in the country. Fourth, to attract foreign capital for our development needs, I propose to reduce the corporate tax rate on foreign companies from 40 to 35%. Deepening the tax base. I have a couple of proposals for deepening the tax base. First, security transaction tax on futures and options of securities is proposed to be increased to 0.02% and 0.1% respectively. Second, for reasons of equity, I propose to tax income received on buyback of shares in the hands of recipients. Other proposals: to improve social security benefits, deduction of expenditure by employers towards NPS is proposed to be increased from 10 to 14% of the employee's salary. Similarly, deduction of this expenditure up to 14% of salary from the income of employees in private sector, public sector banks and undertakings opting for the new tax regime is proposed to be provided. Indian professionals working in multinationals get ESOPs and invest in social security schemes and other movable assets abroad. Non-reporting of such small foreign assets has penal consequences under the Black Money Act. Such non-reporting of movable assets up to 20 lakh rupees is proposed to be depenalized. Other major proposals in the finance bill relate to withdrawal of equalization levy of 2%, expansion of tax benefits to certain funds and entities in IFSCs, and immunity from penalty and prosecution to Benamidar on full and true disclosure so as to improve conviction under the Benami Transaction Prohibition Act 1988. Personal income tax. Coming to personal income tax rates, I have two announcements to make for those opting for the new tax regime. First, the standard deduction for salaried employees is proposed to be increased from 50,000 to 75,000 rupees. Similarly, deduction on family pension for pensioners is proposed to be enhanced from 15,000 to 25,000 rupees. This will provide relief to about 4 crore salaried individuals and pensioners. Second, in the new tax regime, the tax rate structure is proposed to be revised as follows. 0 to 3 lakh rupees, nil. 3 to 7 lakh rupees, 5%. 7 to 10 lakh rupees, 10%. 10 to 12 lakh rupees, 15%. 12 to 15 lakh rupees, 20%. And above 15 lakh rupees, 30%. As a result of these changes, a salaried employee in the new tax regime stands to save up to 17,500 rupees in income tax. Apart from these, I am also making some other changes as given in the annexure. As a result of these proposals, revenue of about 37,000 crore, that is 29,000 crore in direct taxes and 8,000 crore in indirect taxes will be foregone, while revenue of about 30,000 crore rupees will be additionally mobilized. Thus, the total revenue foregone is about 7,000 crores annually. Mr. Speaker, sir, with this, I commend the budget to this august House. Jai Hind.
Item number 2.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to lay on the table the following statements under Section 3 of the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management, FRBM Act 2003, Medium-Term Fiscal Policy cum Fiscal Policy Strategy Statement, and Macroeconomic Framework Statement.
Item number 3.
Sir, with your permission, I rise to move for leave to introduce the Finance Number 2 Bill 2024.
प्रश्न ये कि विधेयक को पुनर्स्थापित करने की अनुमति प्रदान की जाए। जो सदस्य इसके पक्ष में हाँ कहें, जो सदस्य विरोध में ना कहें। मेरे विचार में निर्णय हाँ वालों के पक्ष में अनुमति प्रदान की जाती है। माननीय मंत्री जी, अब विधेयक पुनर्स्थापित करें।
Sir, I introduce the bill.
Item number 4.
The Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir budget. Sir, I rise to present a statement, Hindi and English versions, of the estimated receipts and expenditure of the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir for the year 24-25.
सभा की कार्रवाई कल बुधवार दिनांक 24 जुलाई 2024 को प्राप्त 11 बजे तक के लिए स्थगित की जाती है।
Of this now. So Abhishek, let's also get PK in. PK, watching this, not quite what the middle class would have expected. Minor tinkering in those, in the tax slabs. Minor increase in standard deductions on both pensions and income. What do you think, PK?
Well, I think the first thing, the most positive aspect of the budget is the lower fiscal deficit. The fiscal deficit target is now 4.9%. It was previously 5.1% for the current fiscal year. I think 4.9% will actually be exceeded because tax revenue continues to be very strong. But in terms of the personal income tax slabs, there's no significant change. It seems to be an increase in the securities transaction tax for FNOs, futures and options, which I think is appropriate from a policy standpoint, but obviously has been taken negatively by the market.
Abhishek.
Capital gains tax hasn't really seen too much change.
Yeah.
But
what do you feel about
to be an increase in the rate? The rate has gone up. Long-term capital gains has gone up to 12.5% from 10%.
Yeah.
All right, so
that is there's some surprises there, some negative surprises.
Yeah, so the big picture is that the Modi government remains a fiscal hawk, or no, with the kind of focus on the fiscal deficit.
Yeah.
And then I think there is very accentuated focus on job creation and formalization of the jobs sector, essentially, in terms of getting more youth into the EPFO, for example. And then I see a lot of focus on.
What do you think about the comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act? I want to, there were quite a few positives there that they said we aim to close all litigation within a 6-month period.
6-year period.
6-year period. Then the reassessment, I think that was very good to bring it down. The possibility of reassessment from 10 years to 5 years. So the idea is to make it a little less cumbersome.
More compliant economy.
A more compliant economy. They set up a SOP for TDS defaults. Then there was a decision on decriminalizing
the TDS
delays. So the idea is to try and get more people into it.
Bring down litigation,
get government less litigious, more cooperative with taxpayers kind of mode. But it didn't go all out. I mean, the moment you said comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act, I thought that fundamental slabs would get all changed with it. Sushil Kedia is with us. Sushil, first response. Can't hear you. Unmute yourself, Sushil. We have Sanjeev Goenka with us. Let's go to Sanjeev. Then Sanjeev, hi. First response.
Audio is clear.